is real. Is this real? Am I?
Who are you?
I'm you.
That's an amazing accent.
I like yours as well.
So confused, British Dennis.
You create your own reality. I've known beggars to be kings, and kings to be beggars, all because they believed it so. It's your choice.
It's my choice.
It's your universe.
It's my universe.
And you are God.
I am God.
Mutation. It is the key to our evolution. It has enabled us to evolve from a single-celled organism into the dominant species on the planet.
Now, as you can see, this is the evolution meter, and I've put God, the creator of everything, on the right side, and evolution on the left. I've went ahead and put you guys all on the fence, because of course you're going to hear out my
Let's start where I would start.
Kent Hovind is back. He already has a YouTube channel and has been busy uploading all of his old videos in the certain knowledge that there are new sheep to shear. He has served the time for his crime, and we should allow him that, except of course that he still denies his crime, and it is obvious that self-reflection is one pastime he did not engage in during his incarceration. Humility is not a word in Hovind's lexicon.
See, Charlie, these liberals are trying to assassinate my character. I can't change their mind.
You're wasting our time. You're not going to get us to not believe in evolution.
And why is that?
Because the smartest scientists in the entire world all agree that it's real.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because, Mr. Reynolds, science is a liar sometimes.
Charles Lyell, in this book, building on the work of a couple other guys, he developed the idea that each layer of the Earth is a different age. And he invented what we call today the geologic column. How many have ever heard of the geologic column before? He divided the Earth up into layers, and they gave each one a name, an age, and an index fossil. Maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park, named after the Jurassic layer. Each layer was given a name, and they told everybody how old it was. Now this was done in 1830, long before there ever was carbon dating, potassium-argon dating, rubidium-strontium dating, lead-208, lead-206, uranium-235, uranium-238. None of those existed. This was all done based on the assumption that each layer is a different age. They made up the whole thing out of the clear blue sky. Now it's a fact, the Earth has many layers of rock. No question, that's a fact, folks. How'd they get there? Well, there are two interpretations. The evolutionists will say the layers formed slowly over millions of years and each one is a different age. The Bible-believing Christian says, oh no, these layers are all from the flood in the days of Noah. You can get a jar of dirt, shake it up, set it down. It'll settle into layers for you in a few minutes. But the guys, again, who believe in evolution are always trying to erase the line and make you think their interpretation is part of the fact column. The geologic column is actually the Bible for the evolutionist. It can only be found one place on planet Earth. The only place you will ever find the geologic column is in the textbooks. There is no geologic column. This guy admits it. He said if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately no such column exists. A professor I debated one time said, oh, Hovind, you're wrong. Now there are 26 places on planet Earth where the geologic column exists. I said, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong. There are 26 places on planet Earth where the fossils are found in the order you would like them to be. But that doesn't prove the geologic column exists in any of those places. There is no geologic column. If there was, in one place it'd be 100 miles thick. And the obvious question would be, where's all this dirt coming from?
I'm a fool because I have more faith in the saints that wrote the Bible?
Yeah, because you just read the words of a bunch of guys that you never met, and you just take it on faith that everything they wrote was true.
And what makes you think what your scientists are writing is any more truer than my saints?
Because there are volumes of proven data, numbers, figures. There are fossil records.
Oh, fossil records. Ah! I didn't even think about the fossil records. I guess I'll concede. Oh, wait, one more thing before I do, Mr. Reynolds. Have you seen these fossil records? The numbers, the figures.
Well, no. No.
Oh, interesting. So let me get this straight, Mr. Reynolds. You get your information from a book written by men you've never met. And you take their words as truth, based on a willingness to believe, a desire to accept, a leap of, dare I say it, faith?
Yeah, okay.
I rest my case.
One of the biggest lies kids face in the textbooks is about the geologic column. It's a joke. It's a hoax. It doesn't exist. Look, there's no question the Earth has layers. But if those layers are different ages, why are there no erosion marks between the layers? They all just fit tight to each other like pancakes. I mean, don't you think if that one layer sat there waiting for the next one to come on top, it'd rain once in a while in 10 million years? Just go home and get a jar of dirt and put some water in it and shake it up, folks. It'll settle out into layers for you in a few seconds. It's called hydrologic sorting.
And his ego has only been inflated by his self-imagined persecution. At first I thought I would let this ignoble occasion pass without comment, but I then realised that though I am an old git for whom time's passage is ever accelerating, and for whom conman Kent being caught and convicted for not rendering unto Caesar seems like it was only yesterday, there will be some fresh-faced youths now tapping their fingers on their NetWeb tablet phones who had recent memories of breastfeeding when King Con Kent was imprisoned. It has in fact been 9 years. Therefore, for those who are not familiar with the slickest snake oil salesman in the creationist business, I thought a very brief reintroduction necessary. The rule when listening to Kent Hovind is simple. Assume that almost invariably every word out of his mouth is a lie. This simple rule is important for two reasons. Firstly, it prevents the Bible-believing creationist Christian from falling into the "he believes what I believe, so I must believe what he believes" trap. And secondly, because almost invariably every word out of his mouth is a lie. Kent Hovind's modus operandi is to smile vapidly, talk fast, sling as much as is humanly possible, and overwhelm his opponents, who, while busy trying to clean one of his turds off the floor, will find themselves buried under a dozen more.
Charlie Darwin said in his book on page 170, he said, "It's a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space should be related to each other." Isn't he saying the birds and the bananas are related? He sure is. That's a lie. There's no proof any animal's related to a different kind of animal, other than maybe a common designer. Charlie noticed what is sometimes called microevolution. I don't like that word. I think it confuses kids. Okay, I'm going to use it, but you understand what I mean. Microevolution is actually just a variation, okay? Dogs produce a variety of dogs. Roses produce a variety of roses. Nobody argues about that. It's a fact, folks. It happens. The question is, does it go any farther than that? I wouldn't question the fact that the dog, the wolf, and the coyote had a common ancestor. But every 5-year-old kid knows they're the same kind of animal. We had one try it earlier in the seminar. We had a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. We asked the 5-year-old, which one is not like the others? He got it right away, the banana. See, the Bible says they bring forth after their kind. National Geographic here has an article, From Wolf to Woof, How the Dog Evolved. Well, you better define what you mean by evolved. Right, the majority of folks do not think they came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago. Now, if you want to believe that, that's fine. I don't care what you believe, but don't call it science. Evolution has 6 different meanings. First, you'd have to have cosmic evolution, the origin of time-space matter. Secondly, you'd have to have chemical evolution. The hydrogen from the Big Bang would have to evolve to all 92 elements, plus the synthetic ones. Then you'd have to have what we call stellar evolution. The stars would have to evolve. And nobody's ever seen a star form. We see them blow up all the time. And yet there's enough stars out there that everybody on planet Earth can own 2 trillion of them to yourself. Those are the ones we know about. Then we'd have to have what we call organic evolution, the origin of life. Nobody has a clue how life can get started from non-living material. We'll cover more on that in the next session, about the origin of life. Next, they have what's called macroevolution, changing from one kind of animal into another. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. And lastly, we have variations within the kind that some people call microevolution. Okay, this one happens, whatever you call it, it happens. The first 5 are purely religious. But the definition of the word evolution is really confused for the students on purpose, I believe. I think it takes a giant leap of faith and logic just to go from micro to macro. Sure takes a big leap to go to the other 4 stages. Macroevolution is a fantasy based on imagination. They believe it must have happened, but there's no evidence for it at all. Teachers, though, will give the students one definition of the word to get them to believe the theory, and then they slowly weed in the rest of it when they're not looking. They're going to say, evolution is descent with modification. That's deceitful. That's not really what they mean by evolution. This textbook says, evolution is change over time. First definition. Watch how they change the definition now. In other words, living things have changed over time. Wait a minute. What happened to the first 4 stages? You're going to skip all the way down to living things and just assume the first 4 happened? That's not really what they mean by evolution, folks. What they really mean is the whole theory comes as a package deal. Hitler said, let me control the textbooks and I'll control the state.
You are tuned in to God's Property Radio. Here are your hosts, Sam and Dan. Welcome to God's Property Radio. I go by Sam, and this is episode number 25, On Earth for Heaven's Sake, with Kent Hovind. Really pumped. I'm going to try to keep this intro short. A lot of people out there accept the premise that evolution, quote unquote, is true and factual. And if you're out there and you think that, or you believe that, rather, then I strongly encourage you to listen to this. And if you do not believe in evolution and you believe in some sort of creator or whatever, I still think you should listen to this because there's an excellent explanation on, the definitions of evolution and explanations of the fossil record and the geologic column and carbon dating and all this good stuff that we hear about that backs evolution. And before I get into it, I just wanted to say I have a friend who is homeschooled who believes in evolution, and he was raised with that. But I remember him and I having a conversation years ago, and I mean, really smart, really kind dude, and I'm not putting him down, but we had this conversation where he was just saying, like, with the Big Bang and everything, he was just saying, with evolution, it just makes so much sense. I mean, here's this dot, and here's this dot, and you're just basically missing this one dot. And if we could just have that one dot, it would all connect. And I was like, yeah, but you don't have that dot connected. Therefore, it's just a belief. Now, this is before I came across any of Hovind's work on evolution or any of his lectures or anything. And I just simply said to him, I said, well, at some point you have to go back to the whole theory at the beginning, and apparently it rained on rocks and we had this primordial soup, and well, where did that all come from? And he's a really smart guy, and I'm not putting him down or anything, but he was just like, I really wish that was the focus of this conversation more of the time, because not a lot of people draw attention to the fact that there is no proof from the get-go, either way you cut it. And so, it's interesting how we just assume, oh, the Big Bang, well, where's your support for the Big Bang? I mean, exactly. What kind of factual evidence do you have of that? So, just that being said, Kent Hovind, when I came across Kent Hovind, he answered so much of the questions that I had and even more. And I think that this episode, being our last, pretty much our final episode, but I will say that we will, more on that on the end. There will be another episode of sorts. So for those, stay tuned for the outro, and I'll wrap up my thoughts on the conversation that you're about to hear. But I just want to say it was just amazing to be able to speak to Kent Hovind out of prison on God's Property Radio, and what a great way to just kind of end this last 25 episodes, this 2 years of episodes that the Lord has just blessed this show, and Kent Hovind is just such a huge part of that. And it just felt so good to speak with him, and I'm just again so blessed to have been involved with all of you out there that have been supporting Kent and the Free Kent movement and the We Demand Hovindication and all that stuff. Just thanks to everybody out there. So I guess I'll wrap some stuff up, and I'll kind of give a backdrop of kind of how things led into this a little bit. But for those of you who haven't been following the coin tosses or haven't listened from the very beginning of this series or this show, the people that have been listening, that Dan and I were extremely influenced by Kent Hovind to do what we're doing. And so, this has just been so amazingly cool that the Lord has let all this happen. So without further ado, episode number 25, On Earth for Heaven's Sake, with Kent Hovind.
Here we go. This discussion is under the blood covenant of Yahshua, explicitly without prejudice and under reserve.
Charles Darwin really didn't start the theory of evolution. I would argue that it really started with Satan in the Garden of Eden. the idea that man can become God, which is what Satan said to Eve in the Garden of Eden. You know, you eat off that tree and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So there's always been a plot, I guess would be the best word, or a fight between Satan and God. And Satan wants God's job, apparently. From Isaiah, he said, I will ascend into the heavens. So Charles Darwin is just one of the major players in this long war against God's authority. Charles Darwin was the grandson of Erasmus Darwin, who really came up with the modern theory of evolution. And Charles, his grandson, kind of plagiarized everything. Erasmus was an extremely fat man in the late 1700s, early 1800s. He had to cut out a circle out of his table so he could have his belly there, so he could sit up to the table. But he was a medical doctor, Erasmus Darwin was, and he really came up with the idea that Charles, his grandson, kind of plagiarized and later published. Charles was writing to a guy named Wallace, who was working in one of the Indonesian countries, as I recall. And Wallace really came up with the idea also, this idea of the origin of species, that speciation can happen based upon different climate changes and things like that. And Charles was hurried up the publication of his book because he knew Wallace was also going to publish a book, and Wallace would have gotten the credit for it had Darwin not speeded up his publication and got it in a few days before. There's quite an interesting controversy there. But Charles Darwin's book is titled On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. In the mid-1800s, there was quite a controversy going on over slavery, obviously. We had the Civil War here, and other countries had slavery. England had just abolished it recently. The question of, is there a superior race among the humans? You know, are the whites superior to the blacks, for instance, was the common question. And so Darwin was quite the racist. He thought blacks were inferior. And the idea that, you know, where did these different races come from was really a big deal at that time. I point out there's only one race. It's called the human race. There are different skin colors. And I've never met a black man. I've never met a white man. I've seen all shades of brown, but I've never met one who's really honestly black or really honestly white. Hold a piece of white paper up to your skin and tell me if you are white. I'm sure not. Anyway, but Charles Darwin gets the credit for the theory, even though he doesn't deserve any of it. And all he did was show that there are varieties of animals and plants produced from a parent stock. For instance, on the Galapagos Islands off the coast of Ecuador, South America, he counted 13 or 14 varieties of finches based upon their beak shape primarily. Some had a big heavy beak and some had a skinny beak. And he concluded all these finches probably had a common ancestor. And I would say, I believe you're right, Charlie, and it was a bird. So then he said, wow, because we see these variations in the birds' beaks based primarily on their food supply, that proves elephants are related to bananas, which is stupid and crazy. But he took the obvious observation of little variations within the kind, like the bird kind, or in his case, the finch kind, and extrapolated it over billions of years to say, wow, this could mean all life has a common ancestor. So before you really get into a discussion on evolution with anybody, you have to define the word. Exactly what are we talking about? Most people call what Darwin saw microevolution, or simple variation, which the Bible says is going to happen. They bring forth after their kind. It uses the word kind 20 times in the first couple chapters of Genesis, and that's all we've ever seen. Dogs produce dogs, and birds produce birds, and corn produces corn. You may get a variety of that kind, but it's always going to be the same kind. So if someone says that's what they mean by evolution, well, then I agree. Evolution happens, and it's a good thing. God made it so that every variety of every kind of animal can survive. There are rabbits that can survive in Alaska because the gene code of the rabbit allows for them to produce extremely thick fur to survive the cold weather. There are also rabbits that can survive in the desert, and they have bigger ears to get rid of the heat, like a radiator. But they're still a rabbit, and they're still the same kind of animal. Now, if you took the jackrabbits from Texas and turned them loose in Alaska, they probably would not survive. And if you took the Alaska rabbits and turned them loose in Texas, they probably would not survive. So they probably both branched off of a common ancestor, who knows when. But these variations are probably selected by the environment. They're not created by the environment. The Texas rabbits with the big ears and long legs that can, avoid the heat and avoid the predators, the coyotes, etc., they did not evolve an air conditioner. They simply have bigger ears. They already had ears. They just have bigger ones. And so I would carefully define the word evolution. Microevolution, which I think is a lousy term, but if that's what they want to call it, then I agree, that happens. But it doesn't go anything beyond that. And the further you get away from the norm, the more problems you're going to have. Like farmers have been raising cows to get more milk, okay? Well, they now have, I think the world record cow gives 100 pounds of milk every day. But if you turn that thing loose in the woods, it wouldn't survive 10 minutes. It'd be easy picking for every predator. You have to babysit it now for the rest of its life. It does produce more milk, and there's cows that produce more beef, etc. But again, the further you get away from just the normal average wild cow or wild anything, the more you have to babysit it. And it's a selection of a gene code that already existed. That's not evolution in my book. That's a variety of the same kind. So sadly, Charles Darwin does get a lot of credit for this theory, but he doesn't deserve the credit he gets. But even then, what he discovered was nothing. It's useless. It's stupid. It's obvious that, cows produce cows and birds produce birds, and that's all he saw. His whole book is called The Origin of Species, and he never does get into the origin of species. He gets into the origin of varieties. Well, nobody's arguing about that. So anyway, long answer to a short question, but that would be my answer.
That's great. And not to mention, we just, for our last episode, we did an episode on eugenics, and there's that whole tie-in, and you had mentioned at the beginning of this that the book, what was the book that you said, the title, was it Darwin who came up with it around the time in the 1800s where, slavery was being abolished and whatnot, but you talk about the order of species and like the superior race and things like that and stuff?
Yeah, I have the book right behind me on the shelf. The title of the book is The Origin of Species, or by means of natural selection.
Right.
Or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life.
Right. Which is pretty disturbing in itself.
It is. Today it is. Back then it was acceptable practice. People were looking for ways to justify slavery. Why are we being mean to these dark-skinned people? Oh, because they're inferior. That was the, which they're not at all, but that was the teaching back then. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you were elaborating on the 6 types of evolution. You mentioned microevolution, which is, as you said, a lousy term to describe what it is, but sure, it exists. The actual thing itself exists. But what are the other types of evolutions that are out there, and are they proven? Are they actual science?
Well, I divide it up into 6 different levels or stages of evolution, only one of which is science, which is the last one, microevolution. First, you have to have what they call cosmic evolution. How did the universe come into existence? Where did energy come from? Where did time come from? Where did space come from? Cosmic evolution is the, I think, extremely feeble attempt to explain how time, space, matter, and energy came into existence. Obviously, matter exists. We're here. We're standing on a big ball called the Earth, and there are other balls out there, the sun, moon, stars, etc. Like 70 sextillion is the current estimate of septillion is the current estimate of the number of stars, and that's only the ones we know about. Of course, we don't know about the ones that we don't know about. And so there's an awful lot of matter in the universe. Where did this come from? There's also an awful lot of energy. These stars are burning a huge amount of fuel and producing a huge amount of energy. Where does this energy come from? Where does the fuel come from? Where did time come from? I mean, why do we have such a thing as time? Why can't we go forward or backward in time? Why are we stuck in 2015? Who made this entity that we call time? So you have time, you have space, length, width, height, three-dimensional space. Where did that come from? You have time, space, matter, and energy, four quantities that they have to explain how did they get here. And so the creationist says, well, it's very simple. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And there you have all four of them: time, space, matter, and energy. The evolutionist says, oh, this just all happened with the Big Bang. So the first level or stage of the evolution, of the word evolution, is cosmic evolution, which is purely a religion. If they want to believe in that, that's fine. I don't care what they believe. But they want to use everybody's tax dollars to force that belief to be taught in all the school systems like it's a fact. And it's not even a good fairy tale. It's certainly not science. After this time, space, matter, energy came into existence with the Big Bang, then you have to have stars forming, called stellar evolution. Nobody's ever seen a star form. All we see are stars blow up, called a nova or a supernova. So stellar evolution is purely a religion. They believe it happened, but there's no evidence at all. Then you have to have what's called chemical evolution, where we have 92 naturally occurring elements, from hydrogen to uranium. Where did they come from? According to the Big Bang religion, the Big Bang produced hydrogen and maybe some helium. Okay, well, how do you get gold and silver and uranium and platinum out of hydrogen? You have to have a process that they don't like to talk about, but it's called chemical evolution, where the chemicals themselves have to evolve. And nobody sees that happen, ever. You can't even make it happen in the laboratory with most of them, most of the changes to the higher elements. Let's see, you got cosmic, chemical, stellar, chemical. Then you have to have organic evolution, number 4. That's where life has to get started, from these chemicals. Nobody's ever seen that happen. One atheist I debated, he said, well, Hovind, what are you going to say if a bunch of scientists someday make life in the laboratory? I said, well, I'm going to say that proves it takes intelligence to make life, which is exactly what I've been saying all along. The chemicals don't get together and produce life. I mean, you'd look at a person who just recently died 2 seconds ago. You've got all the chemicals for life in one package. But something is missing. Exactly what is life? And how do you go from non-life to life? That's a major, major leap that they don't like to talk about. But there has to be some point in their imaginary past where life started from non-living material. That's called organic evolution. It's simply never observed. It's not science. It's a religion. Then you have what's called macroevolution. That's where this life form is able to somehow produce different kinds of life. So this bacteria turned into an elephant and a giraffe and a hippo and a human and a monkey and everything else. That's never observed. That's a religion also. And then lastly, you have microevolution, or simple variations within the kind. Now that one happens. That one I agree with, but that's as far as it goes. So of those 6 definitions, the first 5 are purely religious. Number 6 is science, and we should call it something else so it doesn't confuse the kids. Just call it a variation within the kind.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that because, again, when I came across your material, I had never heard anybody even divide up evolution into 6 different types of evolution. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that aren't aware of that. So thank you for all that you've done with that kind of research and presenting it constantly to people.
Well, you're sure welcome. That's true in any court case. You have to define very carefully the terms, the laws, the words. I found this to be my problem with the end time scenario. I was guilty of not distinguishing between the day of Christ, which is the rapture, and the day of the Lord, which is the 1,000-year period. I was also not distinguishing carefully between the words tribulation, which is what the world does to us, and wrath, which is what God does to the world. So carefully defining the terms is essential. If you're going to get into an argument with your wife and she'll say, are you angry? Well, define what you mean by angry. Are there different levels of that? Well, sure, there are different levels or stages of angry. And there are certainly different levels or stages of that crazy word evolution. So to me, once you define the term, the argument's over. You win in the first round.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so there's some other things that come along with evolution that I think that people assume again as fact, and that's all the the data and the records, fossil records and carbon dating and all these other things that go along with that. Can we talk a little bit about some of those elements, like the geologic column and such?
Well, sure. I point out, first of all, there is no such thing as a fossil record. There are a lot of bones in the dirt or rock, but it's not a record. They don't have a date on them. It's not like you dig up a bone and it's got a tag that says 18 million BC. When you find a bone in the dirt, all you know is it died. You don't know that it had any children, do you?
Not a chance.
You can't possibly tell that it had any children that survived. And you certainly, all you know is it lived and it died. Now, if you want to put an interpretation on that and say, oh, this thing lived 18 million years ago and it had offspring that were different than its kind, you've just added your religion to the science. The science part of it is you found a bone in the dirt. Okay, good. That's where the science ends. Everything after that is speculation. When you try to assign an age to it, and they do that, they assign the age to the fossils based on what layer they're found in. So they dig down through the rocks and they'll say, oh, this is the Jurassic period, 70 million years ago. And we found these bones in this layer of rock, so we know this is 70 million years old. So they will date the fossils that they find based upon the rock layer that they're found in, or called the geologic column. But then if you ask them, how do you know that layer is 70 million years old? They'll say, well, we found bones in there that are 70 million years old. Okay, well, how do you know the bones are 70 million? Well, because we found them in a rock layer that's 70 million. Yeah, but how do you know the rock layer is 70 million? Well, because it contains 70 million-year-old bones. It's circular reasoning, pure and simple. Mm-hmm. Absolutely stupid beyond comprehension that a grown man would believe such a thing. But they do. They believe they can date the rocks by the fossils, and then they turn right around and date the fossils by the rocks. And how they don't see it blows my mind. But they don't want to see it because it's real simple. If there's a creator, that might mean there are some rules, like thou shalt not. And they don't want God telling them what to do. They don't want his rules. So rather than believe the obvious, hey, there must be a designer, they ignore that in order to live their own lifestyle the way they want without God telling them what to do. So really it's a moral problem. It's not a science problem at all.
Mm-hmm. Now, the geologic column itself, can we just kind of like break that down a little bit? Just talk about that?
Well, there's no question. If you dig down into the earth, most places you run into different layers of materials. You can see a lot of them in Grand Canyon or places like that where there's all these layers called strata. Sometimes there's a limestone layer, and then there's a layer of, gypsum or some other kind of rock. And so they got all these layers of rock, and they've given them, what happened in the early 1800s, somebody started naming those layers based on different places in England and France, like the Devonian based on Devonshire, Silurian, Mississippian, all this kind of stuff, Jurassic. All of those layers, the whole thing was made up by a guy named Charles Lyell in 1830. He wrote 3 books about it. He was a lawyer who hated God, and he was determined to try to disprove the existence of God. And he wrote this book about the earth being millions of years old and each layer of rock being deposited at a different time. That geologic column that he made up, which is found in every textbook today dealing with that topic, it does not exist any place on the planet except in the book. The only place you're ever going to find the geologic column is in the textbook. So Charles Lyell made up this crazy idea that each of these rock layers is a different age, when the truth of the matter is all of those layers probably formed in less than 1 year during Noah's flood. Just the tides, as the moon goes around, as the earth spins under the moon, plus the moon is moving around, the tides would cause multiple layers to be deposited every few weeks. And so in a year-long flood, when Noah was in the ark for a year, you would get thousands and thousands of feet of mud and sand and rocks and gravel deposited at the bottom that are later going to dry or harden or congeal into stone. And so, of course, you're going to get layers. Get a jar of rocks, gravel, sand, mud, silt, etc. Add water and shake it up. Just keep shaking gently, and it'll settle into layers. The denser stuff goes to the bottom, the lighter stuff goes to the top. It's like, duh, you know, Earth Science 101. Of course, things are sorted based upon a variety of issues. They're sorted based upon their density primarily, but also based upon their surface friction with the water they're moving through. They're going to tend to fall to a deeper level if they can. So the geologic column is, to me, is one of the biggest hoaxes ever put off on mankind. It doesn't exist anywhere. They will point out correctly that usually clams are found at the bottom of the so-called geologic column, and birds are found at the top. And they'll say, see, that proves clams evolved first and birds evolved last. I say, guys, you've got to be kidding. You can't. You'd have to have an enormous amount of help to be that stupid. I think you'd have to go to school for years to learn to be that dumb. Clams are found at the bottom because clams are already at the bottom when the flood starts. Hello, that's where they live. Of course, they're the first ones buried. And birds are the last ones buried because birds, they fly around till they run out of gas, and they're going to be buried on top if there's a massive flood like the Bible says. They're also sorted based upon their mobility. Clams can't run near as fast as birds can fly. And so they're going to be sorted based upon they'd be the first ones trapped in the flood waters and the muddy water. Also, they're sorted based upon intelligence. I don't know if anybody's actually done an IQ test, but so far, most people would probably agree that clams are not too smart. When something bad happens in their environment, they just clam up. And if they get buried under 40, 50, or 200 feet of mud, which is going to harden into stone, they can't even open.
Well, yeah, because they haven't evolved that far yet, right?
Correct, yeah. For millions of years, they all died. None of them made it until they finally evolved. Yeah. That's what they believe. So I think a much more logical and simple explanation for if there is any sorting to this so-called geologic column, then it's based upon intelligence or mobility or body density or habitat, you know, where they already live at the bottom. Of course, they're found at the bottom. All over the world, including the top of Mount Everest, you find petrified clams in the closed position. Okay. What does that indicate? Well, that indicates they were buried alive. I live in Pensacola, Florida, and you can walk along the beach and pick up 1 million seashells, but you hardly ever find a matched pair. And you'll never find them closed if they're dead. As soon as they die, they open and something eats them. And the shells fall apart. So the very existence of petrified closed clams is a real powerful indicator of instantaneous burial and death, and petrified under whatever pressures. The deeper they're buried, probably the quicker they would, the pressure would be greater, so they would petrify quicker. But petrification can happen pretty quick. Under pressure, they can petrify things in 1 day, 24 hours, turn it into stone.
Wow. Okay, so on this topic here, I had somebody kind of contest something that you said, and I kind of wanted you to be able to respond to it. Okay. In the intro video to this episode, I used many excerpts from your videos, and he says, okay, at 9:20 in the video, Kent asks, why are there no erosion marks between the layers? They all just fit tight to each other like pancakes, he says. Then this guy says, we have evidence here in Arizona of erosion between layers in many places, including the Grand Canyon. There is an ancient stream bed there in between Mauve limestone and Redwall limestone that was filled in by the Temple Buttle limestone. The same layer, the Temple Butte limestone, is prominent in some places, but completely eroded away in other places. Then he says, hydraulic sorting cannot explain the alternating layers of shale, limestone, and I can't really read the word, but it's Eolian or Eolan sandstone we see in the Grand Canyon. Only a change in environment during deposition can explain that. He said that Eolian sandstone is formed, and when dried desert sand, including sand dunes, is lithified, limestone is formed in a shallow marine environment. Shale is formed in a deep marine environment. Shaking up dirt and watching it settle in water doesn't explain it all, or it at all, is what he says, this guy Bill.
Well, he's partially correct in that there has to be, this flood lasted a year. How long was Arizona actually underwater during that flood? Do you know? Does he know? Does anybody know?
Absolutely not.
No, nobody knows. All we know is Noah was in the ark for 1 year. Okay, parts of the world might have been inundated very deeply for a short time and then more shallow for another short time. Some parts, as the crust of the earth was broken up, like it obviously is broken up like an eggshell, even today you can see the fault lines all over the place. And those plates, of the earth are still flexing. We still have earthquakes and volcanoes and, mid-Atlantic ridge and all that stuff. There's no question. The earth is broken up and some of the plates are still moving. I don't argue about that. So during this flood, in the days of Noah, you would get sections of earth as big as Texas tipping sideways, or, up and down a little bit, and the water would run to one end or the other. And some parts of the earth might have been above ground, above water level, during the flood for a few months, maybe even enough with the wind blowing to dry it out and create sand. How long would it take for mud after a flood to dry out completely and turn into, loose blown sand? Well, a few days, a few weeks. So the best book I've seen on answering his question about Grand Canyon specifically, because that's the deepest canyon we know of on Earth. There may be some underwater that are deeper, but under the ocean. The best book is Walt Brown's book, In the Beginning. It is fabulous, dealing with this very topic of how all of those things are easily explained. Let's suppose the first 400 feet, I'm picking a number out of the air here, the first 400 feet of layers was deposited during Noah's flood, and then that part of Arizona lifted up a few hundred feet or a few thousand feet as the crust of the earth flexed in a broken eggshell. And sure enough, erosion took place and carved down into those still soft layers. Then that section goes back down and a new layer of fill or mud fills in, and it would fill it. It would be an erosion mark between the layers. That is certainly correct. That could happen and probably did. However, as a general rule, if you look at these so-called layers that they claim are different ages, as a general rule, there are no erosion marks between them. There may be a few occasional exceptions, which is easily explained by Noah's flood. But I think he's missing the big picture. He's straining at a gnat and swallowing a camel here. Take the raft trip down Grand Canyon. For 277 miles, you see neatly bedded layers of strata with very few erosion marks. If he finds one or two erosion marks filled in with the next layer of sediment on top, so what? Why aren't they all over? If that layer sat there for 20 million years waiting for the next layer to be deposited, there'd be erosion marks everywhere. There wouldn't be these, neat, almost perfect bedding planes where they fit on top of each other. So he's partially right that there may be a few of these erosion marks. So I probably should not have said there are no erosion marks. I should have said there are few erosion marks, and even they are best explained by Noah's flood and the crust of the earth flexing up and down and parts of it being exposed to drying, maybe even for weeks or months, and then being re-inundated. There might have been, see, the Bible doesn't say the flood destroyed the plants. There might have been all kinds of log mats the size of Texas floating around. If whole forests were ripped out during this flood, many could survive. Just like today, many living plants survive floating in rivers just because there's a whole floating log mat and they have enough nutrients to their root system that they can actually grow with no dirt. Especially, during this year-long flood, you would get all kinds of things happening. Hydrologic sorting is one of them. There are several other things to explain the different sorting of the layers. If the crust of the earth is indeed broken up like an eggshell, and I don't think anybody would argue that, and these plates or broken pieces are flexing up and down, sometimes slowly, probably much more rapidly in the days of Noah when the cracks were still fresh and they could still move more rapidly, you would get plates of the earth lifting up a few thousand feet, maybe even above sea level, and drying out, and maybe even plants beginning to root or grow. And then that section may get inundated again as that piece of the earth goes back down, sinks, subsides. And so I really think that all of the so-called geologic column is only explainable by a worldwide flood in the days of Noah. It's just not explainable with long, slow processes. I mean, if they want to believe that, that's fine. But see what they want. They want everybody to pay to have their particular interpretation or religion taught exclusively, as if that's the only way to look at it. Kid, that layer is 70 million years old, and don't you dare question that, or we'll flunk you from our college. And that's just plain stupid.
Sure. I did an interview with a guy that was staying here in the campground maybe a couple months ago, and he actually brought something up, and I don't know, you probably know about this, but I thought it was interesting. He said this during the interview. He said the microbe in the soil is absolutely essential to life above the soil, but the microbe under the soil could not live with the life above the soil. So for it to have evolved, you could not have had that microbe developing and had that life above it at the same time. The only way that works is with a 7-day creation.
Interesting thought. I'd have to do some chewing on that before I would. I think I agree at first glance, yes. That's called a symbiotic relationship, where one thing requires another. It's like your tire requires a rim, and your rim requires the tire. They do different things, but they work together to accomplish a goal. And there are literally millions and probably billions of symbiotic relationships in nature. Like you have little microbes in your intestinal tract that actually digest your food. Okay, well, they can't live outside of your intestinal tract, and you can't live without them, and yet they're two totally separate animals. So that's an example of a symbiotic relationship. So the microbes in the soil, I'm not sure which particular ones he's referring to. There's only 400 trillion different kinds of microbes. But that's probably, I will say that's probably correct in what he's saying there, okay?
Yeah. Well, it's something that you don't really hear about on the evolution spectrum. You know, they don't talk about the microbe relationship. So, okay, Sarah, you had an article, correct? And did you want to bring that up at all?
Well, I just was wondering if you would want to talk a little bit about carbon dating and radioactive isotope dating.
Okay. All of the radioactive dating methods, and there are probably 6 or 8 of them, I don't know how many, were invented after World War II, when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and discovered, wow, this produces a radioactive element. And so they began studying. Willard Libby at the University of Chicago really developed carbon dating, 1947 to 49, I believe. Anyway, after World War II. The basic idea is a radioactive element. Let's just take carbon-14 for an example. Normally, carbon, if you look at the periodic table of the elements, carbon is number 12. Well, carbon-14 is extremely rare. I mean, 0.0000765% of the atmosphere is carbon-14. Well, plants are always bringing in carbon to their bodies in the form of carbon dioxide. That's what they make their tissues out of. And so they would be absorbing some of this radioactive carbon from the atmosphere. So in theory, you could check the atmosphere and find it's 0.0000765% radioactive carbon, and you test the plant, and it would also be the same number. However, once the plant dies, it stops taking in any new carbon. So since this carbon-14 is radioactive and it begins to fall apart or decay, they measured how fast it's decaying and guessed it's probably decaying. Half of it would be gone in 5,700 years, roughly. Let's round it off to 6,000. So every 6,000 years, half of this carbon-14 is gone. So if you dig up a plant from the dirt and carbon date it, and it's only got half of the amount that the atmosphere contains, you would say, wow, it's been dead for 6,000 years. If you wait another 6,000 years, half of the half would be gone, so it would be down to a quarter. So if you dig up a fossil, a piece of coal, for instance, and you carbon date it and say, wow, it's only got 1/4 of what we have in the atmosphere today, therefore it's been dead for 2 half-lives or 12,000 years. This is how they do it. It's all based on many, many assumptions, of course. The assumption that the amount we have in the atmosphere today is the same they had back then when they died. And there's no possible way to know that. How much C14 was in the atmosphere 4,000 years ago? Well, you can't know that. We weren't there 4,000 years ago. Secondly, they're basing this on the obvious assumption that this decay rate remains constant all through time and all through history, and it just simply doesn't. Under high temperature or high pressure, radioactive decay can be accelerated greatly to where instead of taking millions or billions of years, it takes only a few seconds for things to decay, a radioactive decay. I cover that in my book, What on Earth is About to Happen, for heaven's sake, which is up on, let's see, freekenthovind.com, 2 Peter 3, the number 2, the word Peter and the number 3.com, and lulu.com. Anyway, so the whole idea that we can tell the age of anything found in the rocks based upon any radiometric dating is ridiculous on its face and wouldn't hold up 2 seconds in a court of law. We see things decay, like, uranium decays into lead and carbon-14 decays, and each of them have a different half-life, but all of the dating methods are based on just real obvious fundamental assumptions that could not ever be proven and would never hold up in a court of law. The problem is they don't have to hold up in a court of law. They just have to hold up in class where the student's going to believe it. Mm-hmm. And if you got a teacher who can, of course, fail you if you don't agree, or a boss who can fire you if you go against the company party line, there's a tendency to go along to get along. Well, I tell them, guys, you atheists, you can't fire me, you can't fool me, and you can't frighten me, and you can't fail me. I'm not in your class. So let's have a debate, and they're scared stiff to take on somebody that they can't fire or fail.
Now, can the like you were saying, we can't know how much carbon-14 was in the atmosphere so many years ago. I mean, I was reading an article that was talking about how just even within the last 100 years with the nuclear testing, we've probably increased the amounts of carbon-14 in the atmosphere. So wouldn't that definitely throw off their abilities to really date things accurately?
Exactly. It nullifies everything ever found by any carbon dating. Plus, every time they've checked the atmosphere, it is indeed increasing. Now, what's causing it? I don't know. Is it our nuclear activities? Is it just normal increase? I don't know. I don't think that's been determined. Maybe it has, but I haven't read on that. But the fact is, it's increasing. So we have a rubber ruler problem here. They can stretch the ruler to make it as big as or small as they want.
Okay. Matt, do you have something that could fit in at this point, or do you want to...
I do have a...
Okay, Matt's got a question here.
Okay.
We're talking about scientific experimentation that tries to prove evolution, but is there a scientific experiment that you would refer to or point us to support the faith of the creationist or to disprove the faith of the evolutionist?
I don't know that you could prove something historical with a scientific method like that. Science deals with things we can observe and study and test and demonstrate. Suppose you're on an island and a computer washes up on the beach. And you want to determine, hey, did somebody make this or did it make itself? But you're unable to get off of the island. So you study it, you look at it, and you say, from all human experience and experiments, complicated things like this don't make themselves. There must have been a designer, a creator. Now, whether you ever get to meet the guy or not is a totally different argument. But you could conclude logically there must have been a creator of this computer, even though you can't see him and you probably never will. You would still be correct to assume there was a creator. I think when you look at a living organism like a simple cell, there's no such thing as a simple cell, but a single cell, you say, wow, this cell is more complicated than the space shuttle. There must have been a creator. Now, who is that creator? Is it Allah or Jehovah or Buddha? Well, that brings up a different set of arguments. But the point is, there must have been a creator of some kind. And so that's common sense 101. Let's get over that hurdle first, and then we'll take the second hurdle of which creator.
Right. Now, okay, I want to hear the Kent Hovind response to this. If some kid said to you or somebody said to you that, oh, well, I guess the main question is, how does evolution fit into a biblical worldview? But then secondly, say that they said something like, well, man was formed from the dirt, by God. So if man came from the dirt, then why is it so far off to say that man came from a rock?
Well, computers are made of 100% natural objects. I mean, everything in my computer in front of me here, the plastic, the glass, the silicone chips, I mean, every single thing, the wiring, the copper that probably has some gold wiring, I don't know. Every one of those is a naturally occurring element or combined elements together in some, like to make plastics, for instance. Okay, we could break this computer down and into components and say it is X amount silver, X amount gold, X amount copper, X amount, hydrocarbons, etc. No question. It's 100% natural objects. But those things don't arrange themselves into a complicated thing like a computer.
Right.
So to say man is made out of dirt is correct. But then to say this happened without a designer is incorrect. Just like saying because my computer is natural objects, therefore it made itself. That's a stupid leap of logic.
Agreed. So, okay. So then back to that first question, how does evolution fit at all into a biblical worldview? Because I think there are a lot of people that do call themselves Christian that assume that the scientific data proves that, and they try to basically rationalize that worldview of, evolution and the Bible together. There are people out there that do that. So how does evolution fit into a biblical worldview at all?
Well, you'd have to go back again and define the word evolution. If you mean microevolution, that animals can produce a variety of offspring according to their kind, well, then certainly that happens. I mean, we can observe it. And farmers can actually select a particular kind, like corn that's more drought resistant to grow in drought resistant regions, or maybe more acidic soil. They get a certain variety of corn that grows in soil that's more acidic or more alkaline or whatever. Sure, varieties happen. There's probably 100 varieties of corn. It's still corn. So if you mean microevolution, that fits perfectly in the biblical worldview that God created each initial kind with a flexible gene code that has limits, but varieties can be produced. For instance, there are horses as big as the Clydesdale and as small as the little tiny miniature, ponies that are only 20 inches tall. That's quite a variety within the horse kind. But you're never going to get a horse as big as Texas or one as small as a flea. There are limits to these variations. And once again, the further you get away from the norm, the more problems you're going to have. Mm-hmm. They've done this with dogs. They've done selective breeding to create Chihuahuas, which is 100% useless dog in my opinion, okay? Turn all the Chihuahuas loose into the woods. Just turn them loose. How many would survive for 6 months? None, right?
Right.
They'd be wolf bait. So, yes, varieties happen. There's two kinds of selection. One is called artificial selection, where man decides what he wants, like to create a particular variety. The Chihuahua is an example. Then there's natural selection, where nature survives, where the slowest rabbit is probably going to get eaten. Mm-hmm. And so over a period of time, only the fast rabbits survive, and pretty soon all the rabbits are pretty fast.
Right.
Well, if the rabbit has to survive based on his speed, which he does, why don't they evolve wings or a rocket engine? The point is, there's a limit. And so God made each animal, each kind, with an ability to produce a variety of offspring. And that's, to me, evidence of it. Ford does the same thing. They'll take a car, a frame, and an engine and a drivetrain and say, okay, we're going to make this adaptable where it can be a 2-door, a 4-door, or a pickup, or a hatchback, or a station wagon. Okay, it's all designed, and it's because the engineer hopefully has enough insight to plan ahead. We don't have to redesign it from scratch every time. Microsoft does that with their programs. They say, we're going to take this Microsoft Word and we're going to modify, we're going to go ahead and use 10,000 lines of code in this other program to do email or something else, Mm-hmm. Sure, there's identical lines of code in Microsoft PowerPoint and Microsoft Outlook. Identical lines of code, thousands of identical lines of code. What does that prove? Does that prove they both evolved from Morse code, or does that prove the same guys designed them?
Right.
They'll point to evidence of us having similar DNA to other creatures. Yeah, I agree. But they're coming to the wrong conclusion. That proves a common designer, not a common ancestor.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a couple topics I want to cover here, but since we were on like the topic of, like you said, natural selection versus artificial selection, with the whole topic of Darwin and survival of the fittest. So if it's survival of the fittest, if that's if that's our the way that we accept things, why does feeding the homeless matter? If this is all true, if evolution is true, why does anything like that matter?
Well, it shouldn't. Why should we have hospitals? Man, somebody gets sick, let them die. Which is the whole argument of like the Ebenezer Scrooge and the Christmas Carol movie. He finally realized, wow, where does compassion fit into an evolutionary scenario? If indeed evolution is true, then only the strongest have a right to survive. Why help the homeless or the poverty-stricken? Why do we have a welfare system at all?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't understand how an evolutionist can agree to anything like that. I mean, hello, it's against your theory. You're helping someone survive who, by your theory, should not survive. They're not the strongest. They're not the fittest. Let them die.
Yeah, that's an oxymoron in itself, like you just said. Like any sort of government handout or food stamps or whatever it is that's pushed by a government that pushes evolution, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. And they don't see it, though. They also don't see that they create their own standards based upon biblical standards that they don't believe in. Like, is murder right or wrong? I like to ask evolutionists, is killing someone right or wrong? Well, they'll say it's wrong. Well, why? Why would it be wrong? Is it wrong for the lion to kill the zebra and eat him? No. Well, then why would it be wrong for you to kill your neighbor and get his food and get his stuff? Well, it's just wrong. Well, why? They don't have a standard to govern by, One atheist told me, he said, I asked him, I said, how do you tell right from wrong? He said, I decide what's right and wrong. He said, I'm the God of my own universe. I said, man, I'm glad to hear about that because I'm going to shoot you in 5 minutes. He said, you can't do that. I said, why not? I'm the God of my own universe. I decided it's fine for me to shoot you.
Right. No.
Yeah, why not? Hello,
right. Are there absolutes?
That's really what it boils down to. And one atheist told me, he said, there are no absolutes. And I said, are you absolutely sure?
Right.
Totally stumped him. He said, that's not fair. I said, that's perfectly fair question. How can you be absolutely sure there are no absolutes? Think about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I really like the way that this is transitioning here. But just to make sure that we stay on the creationism side of things, how does the Bible explain dinosaurs? Because we have a lot of people there's this big question mark, like where do dinosaurs fit in with the Bible?
Well, the word dinosaur was made up in 1841, so I doubt you're going to find that in a book written in English in 1611, 270 years earlier. So that would, of course, the word computer is not in the Bible either, okay? Neither is Ford or Chevy or Chrysler. So the word dinosaur made up in 1841 means a terrible lizard. It comes from Latin and Greek, I believe. Okay. Well, in the Bible, it says very clearly in Genesis 5 that all the people lived to be 900 plus before the big flood came in the days of Noah.
Yeah, and please explain that. I really want to hear the canopy theory.
Okay, well, write that down to remind me later. But
yes.
So if everybody's living to be 900 before the flood came, which is what the Bible says, I mean, look at Genesis chapter 5. You can read the dates for yourself. It's real simple to do. It's also a biological fact that reptiles never stop growing. Most species of reptiles grow all their life. They will never stop. So if the people are living to be 900, I think we could assume that something was different on the planet, and probably everything was living longer, growing bigger. So if the reptiles could live 900 years, they would get 80 feet long, and that's the dinosaurs. Only they didn't call them dinosaur because the word didn't exist. They called them dragons. And all through history, there are stories of people killing dragons. Even up until the last few hundred years, there are stories of people killing dragons.
Sure.
And there might be some still alive, like Loch Ness Monster kind of stuff. I don't know. I've never seen one. But there certainly are many thousands of people who claim they've seen what would be considered a living dinosaur.
Yeah.
So I think that to a Christian, in the biblical perspective, that fits in fine. If somebody catches a plesiosaur in their net someday in the ocean and hauls it in and puts it on display in the Smithsonian, the atheists are going to say, wow, that proves this one survived for 70 million years. The thought of questioning their religion is never going to occur to them. It cannot fit in their little brain.
Right. Okay. So can you explain the canopy theory? I know that you had talked about hyperbaric oxygen chambers and such. Can we talk a little bit about this? Can we hear about that?
Sure. Today, the atmosphere around the Earth stretches out, say, 60 miles, okay? You get up 5 miles, like the top of Mount Everest, and it's getting real thin and pretty tough to breathe. There's people who climb Mount Everest without carrying oxygen tanks, but there aren't many of them, okay? And they got to specially train for that. The air is pretty thin at 5 miles, but really it goes up for, 60 miles. Airplanes have a real hard time flying above, say, 7 miles or 8 miles. I mean, we have jets that go higher, of course, but commercial airliners, 6, 7, 8 miles, that's about all they're going to get because the air is too thin. If we could squeeze all the air down that stretches out 60 miles, squeeze it down into, say, 8 or 10 or 12 miles, and put a roof over it, condense all the air into a shield around the Earth, let's just pick a number and say 10 miles. The Bible says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 and 7, that there was water above the firmament. You read later in verse 20, and it tells us the firmament is where the birds fly. So obviously that's the atmosphere, the air we're breathing. If there was a canopy of water or probably ice, which is actually technically still water in a different form, if there was ice above the atmosphere surrounding the entire Earth like a big snow globe or a crystal ball, you would have the air condensed down to this 10-mile limit, and probably everybody on the surface would be breathing compressed air of maybe 1.5 or 2 times the air pressure. Right now at sea level, it's about 14.7 pounds per square inch is the pressure. But what if you increased it to 20 psi or 25 psi? Now, every time you take a breath, you're getting twice the oxygen molecules in your lungs. And so you would absorb oxygen at a much higher rate, just like some athletes will breathe pure oxygen on the sidelines to get reoxygenate their blood and re-energize them and get ready to go play the game again. If you had compressed air to breathe all the time, if the whole world was compressed air like a hyperbaric chamber is, and many hospitals have these hyperbaric chambers, high-pressure chambers, to breathe in, because everything heals up faster with hyperbarics. Well, if the whole world was hyperbaric, you could probably run for 100 miles without getting tired because you're getting more oxygen every time you take a breath. And so I think this is one of many factors that allowed people to live much longer and probably grow much bigger before the flood came. It would include insects, plants, everything. So I think today's atmosphere is 21% oxygen. If you could increase it to 35%, which is about the max you'd want, anything beyond that starts to become toxic. You get oxygen toxicity. But increasing the air pressure and increasing the percentage would greatly change things here on Earth. They would live a long time and feel great all the time and heal up instantly or real quickly when you get hurt. You would heal up right away. You wouldn't need a hospital. You'd be healed before you got there. And so I think if you look at the Bible, it says very clearly in Genesis 1, 6, and 7 that there was water above the firmament. Now, if you get the book of Josephus, which I've got right here beside me, he says the Jews taught that when God first created the earth, it had a canopy of ice, or a crystalline canopy, 3 fingers thick, surrounding the entire earth. Now, how they knew that, I don't know, but they said 3 fingers thick. So let's say 2.5-inch thick crystalline canopy. A solid crystalline canopy of ice above the atmosphere would stay frozen in contact with outer space, just like an Eskimo igloo can stay cold while he builds a fire inside. He can't melt the roof because it's so cold outside, it draws the heat away. Just like you can boil water in a paper cup, because the paper burns at 450 and the water boils at 212. So as long as it's water in there, you can't burn down past the water level. Okay, who cares? Anyway, this canopy of ice overhead, I believe, was held up there by at least two things. One would be just simple air pressure, like an inflatable building. If the whole Earth had a solid crystalline canopy, it would stay up by the air pressure. Secondly, by the Earth's magnetic field. It's called the Meissner effect. Super cold ice is magnetic, and it can be levitated, like two magnets pushing away from each other. So there might have been other factors, like the centrifugal force on a spinning Earth. Maybe that had a factor. I don't know. Anyway, hope that helps. So I believe the Bible clearly teaches there was a canopy above the Earth, and it's probably now gone, fell down at the time of the flood.
Right. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense the way you put it with the canopy for, Noah's flood coming in and, all the lifespans changing too. So it makes a lot of sense in context. And I appreciate that. I didn't really think about that until I came across your stuff. So I have some other things. Okay. So how is evolution, just the theory of evolution, how is that dangerous? Because we have a lot of evidence that people who have subscribed to Darwinism or Darwinian evolution and such, like Hitler and such, how did they get to that point? And how is evolution just really, how can it be the opposite of good?
Well, we teach the kids they are nothing but an animal. And then we sit back and wonder, why are they acting like animals? Like, duh, you told them there's an animal. If a kid believes he came from a rock and there is no God, there are no rules, we evolve slowly over millions of years, there cannot possibly be any moral standard. Everybody gets to decide what's right and wrong for themselves, and the strongest survive. So if I can steal from you, okay, I made it. Too bad for you. Isn't that the way it is in nature with the lions going out eating the zebras? If I can catch it, I can eat it. So I think it gives an entirely false concept of reality to say that there is no God and we are just a product of natural forces, so the strongest survive. So I think evolution is one of the greatest problems with the moral decay. It goes back to the question of what is right and wrong, and how do you tell? How does anybody anywhere tell what is right or wrong if evolution is true?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it plays on our pride too a little bit, like to be like a superior being, or we can evolve, we can get there on our own without God.
Which is really what they want. It goes back to Satan in the book of Isaiah. He said, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And then he told Eve, he said, Eve, if you eat off this tree, you get to become God. Mm-hmm. And she fell for it, plunged humanity into royal problems ever since. But it's the same lie of Satan, that man gets to be God. And that's really what evolution's all about.
Yeah.
Not only is it not working, we're not becoming like God, the job's not even available.
So can you tell me a little bit, because I know you've had experience with just helping to remove like books that were out of date as far as scientific theories go and evolutionary theories and such. Can you tell me a little bit about like that relationship with the government and books and laws that require things to be factual?
Okay, in 1799, George Washington was bled to death by his own doctors. He probably had the flu or something similar. And back then they taught in the medical schools, if a person is sick, they have bad blood. The heart produces the blood, it goes out, and the body absorbs it. Which, because they didn't have microscopes good enough to see the capillaries that make it return from the arteries to the veins. Since they couldn't see these capillaries, they thought the heart produced blood, not simply circulated the blood. So the textbooks in medical school taught the doctors, if a person is sick, take out some of their blood, but be sure to take it out of both sides. You have to take it out of the right side and an equal amount out of the left side. It's called the doctrine of humors, which today we think is very humorous, that they could be so dumb. But they actually bled George Washington to death by taking too much blood out. Okay, question. We now know as medical books no longer teach that, but suppose you came across a medical book today that said the doctrine of humors was correct, and to get a person over the flu, you take out their blood. What would you do to correct that book? Well, that's the same kind of steps you have to look at and say, okay, we've got books teaching the kids that the embryo growing in the mother has gill pouches. This was proven wrong in 1874. Why is this still in books today? Get this out of the books. It's just stupid to be teaching something proven wrong 130 years ago. Why are we teaching this? So there are several ways to do that. One is to simply ask the teacher or the school district, look, guys, on page 85 of your book, it's got something that's been proven wrong 140 years ago. Can we get the school board to vote that this page be cut out of the book, or glued to the next page, or put a disclaimer in the front, or do something? But don't teach the lie. I mentioned in one time I was speaking, I mentioned 30 or 40 or 50 lies in the textbooks. And this person, the atheist, got up after me and said, well, folks, Hovind is right. All these things are not correct. But Hovind, I got a question for you. What are you going to replace it with?
Okay.
You got to be kidding.
Okay.
They're not kidding, though. We can't take this lie out until you find a replacement. I said, guys, take out the lies. It makes the book shorter. The kids would enjoy that. Get rid of these 30 pages.
Yeah.
Okay?
Sheesh. Wow.
I was stunned at that level of stupidity. The problem is they're not. These people reproduce. They're making more. Wow. So that's job security for me.
Right on. Okay. So, can you tell me, as far as like, have you studied like UNESCO and different, organizations that control the educational realm at all?
To some degree. There are definitely people who have an agenda. It really goes back to the much bigger question of what does Satan want to do on planet Earth? And he wants to rule the world. And he's got a bunch of his flunkies who are out there pushing his agenda. They want to rule the world, and that goes back to the New World Order and the communism, socialism, Marxism, Nazism. There have always been folks who want to rule the world like Pinky and the Brain. And they're still around today. So they would much rather have you pay for their religion to be taught, which is what it really amounts to. We're all paying for this evolution to be taught in the school system. Well, I got a better idea. Let's all pay to have mine taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Sure.
I'm going to be homeschooling my children, and I was thinking how awesome it would be to have like your course, just in my home, for that.
Well, a lot of people use my videos for their homeschoolers and just love them. I don't really have a good curriculum yet based on all that, and probably won't develop it. But if you want to develop one, go for it.
I do want to. Okay. So is there anything you'd like to say on the evolutionary tip that maybe we left out at all?
Well, you mentioned something earlier at the beginning here. You said somebody was contesting what I say, and he was talking about the erosion marks in the geologic column.
Yes.
If someone wants to contest what I say, that's perfectly fine, of course, but they should do it to my face and give me a chance to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I am open to any debate with any number of evolutionists simultaneously. I'll take on 100 at a time on two simple conditions. I get half the time, and we talk about one topic at a time.
Right on.
They can bring in their national world expert on, carbon dating or dinosaurs or whatever they want, one topic at a time. They can have as many people on their side as they want, and I get half the time. That's all.
And so you're accepting challenges at this point? Anybody who wants to have a debate, you'll do it?
I'm offering the challenge. Yes, I would accept it. They won't do it.
Right.
I've had over 4,600 professors at universities refuse to debate me. It's not that I'm smarter than them. It's that I'm right and they're wrong. What's that noise a chicken makes? That's the problem right there. See, it goes back to they want to talk about their theory in front of their students where they have the obvious academic and psychological advantage.
Yeah, I mean, there is, and what you said, I really appreciated the way you put that, and you've said it so many times in your videos, but, no matter how smart you are, doesn't mean that you're right or wrong. It doesn't make you right to be smart. It's not a synonymous relationship.
Yeah, some people are smart in one area and stupid in another. And so if they believe they came from a rock, that's stupid. There's no kind way to say that. Mm-hmm. It is stupid.
Yeah, well, okay, so on the New World Order tip, just quickly, I don't want to cover a lot. We cover a lot on this show about that already. But, so with like the New Age agenda and the evolutionary agenda that wraps into that, I don't know what you've thought about as far as, the Antichrist and some of the great deceptions like that Jesus mentions in Matthew 24. He mentions deceivers and deception like 4 times in the first half, And so a lot of us nowadays in these podcasts that are part of these different networks and such, one of my buddies, Gans Shimura, who Gans was, he's one of the hosts of Canary Cry Radio who had you on. And he has a film series called Age of Deceit. And he starts off his film with you talking about, I think it was depopulation or something. But it's a documentary film. But his point is that he's not saying empirically that this is going to happen, but we see it around us being primed very much so. I mean, how many shows do we have? How many movies have been made about aliens and some sort of, conflict between human and extraterrestrial or whatever? And his theory in this movie, where he kind of rests it, is that we should just be aware of this because at some point it's quite possible that, say, a spaceship lands over the Vatican or lands over Washington, D.C. or Israel or wherever, and this advanced being comes out of this spaceship, and they say, "Oh, okay, you guys, we created all of your religions. We've been here this whole time. We created you. We were actually once you, but we evolved, and we became what we are today. And you can be like us. You can be as gods." This goes full circle in a scenario like that, right back to what we've been talking about this whole time, to the Garden of Eden. And I think that if something like that was to happen, I'm speculating at this point, obviously, but if something like that was to happen, there would be a great falling away, as is mentioned in the Bible.
Well, yes, and I think we've all been psychologically prepared for that to happen. And I think it's probably anything like that is going to be done by people on Earth, maybe with virtual reality, with the HAARP technology, High Altitude Aurora Research Project, HAARP, where they can, use extra low frequency, ELF, and project and create virtual lenses and virtual mirrors in the sky. And they end up being able to produce faces like Wizard of Oz, where you have the face coming on the cloud of smoke and talking. And it's not going to be an alien. It's going to be something here from Earth, but people are going to accept it as some kind of alien. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's all psychological preparation for this coming day. Satan knows what's coming. He knows the showdown. And, it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine, though, the next day, the headlines reading, God disproven, evolution goes a step further, that we didn't know about. And all of a sudden they have all these missing links and everybody's, the majority of people are sold on everything. And right. I think what you're doing, Kent, and what you have been doing is really, again, like the root of this is like the evolutionary platform.
Well, there's really only 2 choices. There is a God or there isn't. Nobody's thought of a third choice. If there's a God, then he owns this place. It's his. He can make the rules. If there is no God, then there are no rules. There's no such thing as right and wrong, and we decide what we want. And so not only our personal lifestyle, but our whole society, our government, everything is really hinging on this question: is there a God or not? And I think it's just essential. So it's really Satan versus God, and we just happen to be the battleground. And oftentimes the battleground suffers as much as the warring parties. After the Civil War, battles went through an area. The trees were peppered with bullets, and many of them died, being shot down by cannons and stuff. I mean, the trees suffered, and they didn't do nothing. So I think we are the battleground between this war between Satan and God, and it's quite a mess.
Yeah. I guess for any of our audience that is listening to this episode that's been on the fence about evolution and maybe is coming around, can we just talk a little bit about the Lord? The apologetics and leading someone to Christ, perhaps.
Well, it's very simple. If there's a God, and I believe it's obvious that there is, then why did he do it? What does he want? And what if he has a bunch of rules and we break them? Now what? What if there are 10 commandments? Thou shalt not steal. Well, what if you stole something? Like Adam and Eve, God gave them one commandment. Don't eat off this tree. And they broke the rule. So now what? Well, that goes into the question of how does man get back to God after he disobeys him? How does a child get back in fellowship with their mom or dad? How does a husband or wife get back in fellowship with their partner? How do we get back in fellowship with God after we've had a conflict or a problem? Well, Adam and Eve sewed fig leaves together and made aprons. God said, oh, no, something has to die. You don't understand how serious your sin is. Something has to die. And God killed probably sheep and produced skins of the lambs and gave them coats. By the way, difference between a coat and an apron. Man's idea of modesty is not quite the same as God's idea of modesty. Okay? But then later Cain and Abel come on the scene, and Cain brings his fruit, his vegetables, and he basically says, hey, God, look what I did for you. And God would not accept it. God said, oh, no, you don't understand, son. Something has to die. And so Abel brought a lamb, and God accepted it. And I think God's trying to teach us, hey, guys, it requires blood. And in Leviticus, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. Something has to die for you to be, redeemed and forgiven. And so that's basically what it boils down to, is how do we get back? If there's a creator, which the Bible clearly indicates there was, and we've sinned against this creator, which we have, now what? Well, all through the Old Testament, they brought a lamb and offered up this sacrifice, and then Jesus was God himself come down in the flesh. He died on the cross and became the ultimate sacrifice, the final one, and his blood cleanses away our sins if we receive his payment on our account. So 46 and a half years ago, someone explained to me that I was a sinner, I was guilty of breaking God's laws, and I was headed for judgment and going to be in trouble. But Jesus died in my place and would like to forgive me. And I said, well, I want that. What do I do? He said, well, it's already done. You accept what was done. You don't actually do anything. I said, okay, tell me, what's next? He said, well, talk to the Lord. Tell him, Lord, I believe you died for me. I'd like you to forgive me and save me. And so I prayed a simple prayer 46 and a half years ago and said, Lord, I'm a sinner. I am guilty, but I believe you died for me. I accept what you did for me on the cross. Would you please save me? And something changed inside of me that day, and it's still changing, by the way. So the Bible calls that being born again, or getting saved, or getting converted. All the same thing. You get born the first time because of what somebody else did. You had nothing to do with your first birth, nothing. You got a free gift of life from your mom and dad. And getting born into God's family is very similar. You get a free gift of eternal life because of what Jesus did, not because of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah. Okay. Matt, do you have another question there written down?
I do have it.
Okay. Matt's got another question for you.
This is not related to the evolution topic, but in light of all of the separation of church and state banter that we hear, what's your best guess as to why Christian churches must be a 501c3 or nonprofit in order to ordain a minister? And further, in your opinion, why must one be a member of such an organization to be an ordained minister when this is an office of the church, not the state?
That's a whole battle that's been fought for the last century that nobody seems to be winning, and it's really off my radar. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, you know. I have the same question everybody does, is why is the government deciding what is and is not a church, and exactly where is the jurisdiction of this government, you know? Is it only on federal land? If so, it's only in D.C. and military bases and post offices, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they in this? Why are we having this discussion at all? You know, who decides? Who decides? And that kind of thing. So, I'll have to defer that to somebody who's more expert than me, brother, because I sure
yeah.
I know the question, I know the problem, I don't know the answer.
Right. Well, I guess, you know, I'm a musician, and I was never trained professionally, went to a college to get a degree, but I've made over 10 albums in my life. I still think I fit the bill of a musician regardless. I think that's what God gave me a gift to do, so I don't need, you know, any sort of certificate that says I am one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your work speaks for itself.
Right.
So let's suppose Thomas Edison was a grade school dropout. I don't know that he was, but let's suppose he only went through 4th grade and dropped out and ended up being a great inventor. So, fine, go for it, you know. Getting a college degree does not obviously prove any intelligence. Most of them graduate thinking their grandpa was a rock. I mean, I can't help them. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I got. So where should a new believer, or somebody that maybe was a believer or raised in a Christian family, but maybe, you know, took the prodigal son route of things, where should they start in the Bible? Where do you recommend is a great place for people to just start reading the Bible and to understand it and apply it to their daily lives?
Well, I tell people, brand new converts, read the book of Genesis first. That covers 2,000 years of human history from the beginning. And then you might want to skip up and read the whole New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John are the 4 biographies of Jesus' life. The Old Testament, which we call it, has 39 books in it, and it's about 3/4 of the Bible, almost exactly 3/4 of the Bible is Old Testament. And then the New Testament is after Jesus came. It starts with his biography 4 times, from different perspectives, and then the book of Acts telling what did these disciples do, what were their actions after Jesus left.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the rest of the New Testament is letters written to these, you know, these guys went around starting churches in various cities. And then these churches would have questions or issues, and so Paul or Peter or somebody would write them a letter to give further explanation of different Bible teachings on certain topics. So most of the what are called the epistles are letters to these churches, like Romans and 1st and 2nd Corinthians and Galatians, etc. They are letters to explain usually particular doctrines in more detail, like what does the Bible teach about baptism or justification or salvation, etc., like that. So I would say read Genesis and then skip up and read the New Testament and then read the whole Bible. It's not going to hurt you at all. Even if I tell people, even if you don't understand it, just read it. If you read the Bible for 30 minutes and don't understand a thing, at least you weren't sinning for 30 minutes. That's worth something.
Right on. Okay. Okay. Before we get into just the last few things here, you've heard of the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, have you not?
I don't know anything about it, but yes, I just have heard the name is all.
Okay, it's basically what psychiatrists use to diagnose mental illnesses and just issues like that. And okay. I just wanted to read to you. Okay, this is from the DSM-5, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the current standard. Okay. There is a section in here that distinguishes psychopathology from religious, spiritual, and transpersonal experiences. And it gives a listing of experiences that appear to be religious but are actually psychopathological according to the diagnostic manual. And so in this subsection, there's a bunch of different things they list, but again, the most important thing I thought was in subsection I, they say that the Bible as a moment-to-moment guide to life and applying Scripture in concrete ways to direct one's daily experiences is a psychopathological experience. So it's actually a problem or disease that you can be diagnosed with.
Well, it sounds like somebody's trying to set up an excuse to lock up and kill Christians like Hitler did with Jews and people he disagreed with. To me, it sounds like the person who wrote that manual is the one who needs to be locked up. To me, that's a setup so that they can have either a law that allows them to do that, or an excuse where some psychiatrist can say, well, this person believes the Bible, therefore he's a danger to society, lock him up. So
right.
That's what happens in communist countries, and that's a very dangerous path to go down, in my humble, totally unbiased and correct opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that all being said, just summing up here our discussion, what can we do with the knowledge of these topics that we've just discussed, and the New World Order and all these different things? What's the most important thing, Kent?
Well, there's many ways to do this. The simplest is what Jesus did: grassroots. Ignore what the government does. Ignore what the leaders do. Just go after the people. I mean, it doesn't matter what the textbook says in one sense if none of the students are going to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't stop the grassroots approach. Just reach people, which is why we let people copy my videos and spread them around. Please do. Just don't change them and don't sell them. But if you want to copy them, give them to your friends, please do that. We're trying to win a war, not build a castle. So I think the grassroots approach to me is the simplest and best. If you want to try to affect your school board or your textbooks or the government at some level, to go for it. But historically, it's not been very effective to do that. Just reach the people instead. So most of my effort goes into that, reaching the people. Secondly, is pray. Ask God to step in and do something amazing. It's his problem, really. It's ultimately, this is God's world and it's his problem. So I turn it over to him. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, just all that being said, I want to personally thank you, Kent, for everything that you've done in the past here. Without your videos, I feel like I would have slipped back into a secular worldview. And I thank you so very much for all your contributions to the kingdom. I know that Dan, my co-host who couldn't be here, he also feels the same way about you, and we've just been blessed by what God has been doing through you. And the reason that we started this podcast initially was because of you, and we just couldn't have thought of a better way to end this program than to have you here, and it's just a blessing. Just praise God for all that he's done to help you through this second batch of charges that they try to throw against you. And can I just real quick, as I move into some other ways of ministering besides this podcast, I really am looking to get more into like apologetics and things to help strengthen my discussions with people and whatnot. Do you have any recommendations of some sources that I could go to get better at that?
I guess just the word apologetics bothers me a little bit. I don't apologize. This is God's word. I'm not trying to apologize for it. So they need to find a better word to get me involved in that. But I think many people will go for training for years and years so that they can try to reach the top 1% of intellectuals in the world. And they're missing the point. Jesus didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Go after the common man. Go after the children. And you don't need any degrees or education to do that. So I'm not against education, obviously. I have 4 doctor's degrees, and I think, I try to study and learn and read, and I'm willing to listen and talk on topics. But basically the idea is to keep it simple, 4th grade level, and avoid all these big words. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm trying to win people to the Lord. So I would be careful that you don't have a great talent till you do something for God, and Satan gets you distracted chasing something that's going to be ineffective.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to build a fastest race car and you spend all your time polishing the wheels, you're missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
It's the motor. They don't have a prize at the end of the Indianapolis 500 for the shiniest car. They don't have a prize for that. And God's not going to have a prize for the one, with the most intellectual arguments. It's win souls, get somebody up to heaven.
Right.
Just don't get distracted. That'd be my advice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, Kent, thanks again for all your time. I don't know if there's anything else. Matt, do you have anything? Okay, Matt has one more question for you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had asked if there was a specific scientific experiment that proves creationism or evolution or debunks one or the other, and you said probably not, because in both cases they're faiths. So in other words, we should be, this is a question formed in the form of a statement, we should be looking at the facts and then from a philosophical or logical perspective looking at which is the most coherent and the most logical and sensical, right?
Well, sure. Go back to the computer on the beach analogy. Is it most logical to believe that somebody designed it and it washed up on the beach, or that the wave action formed it from the sand? You know, which is more logical? All of human experience would tell us there must have been a designer, even if I can't meet him or see him. There had to be. These things don't happen by themselves. And so, to me, that's common sense 101. So, yeah, the logical side is there must have been. Now, can I do an experiment to prove there's a designer out there? No. But you don't need that. It's common sense. Yes, there had to be a designer.
Okay. So, to wrap it up here, for anybody that wants to get in touch with you, do some sort of like interview or get some sort of debate going and such, how can people reach you for that? I know you have your YouTube channel going and you've been posting like mad. So how do people get in touch with you?
Well, the YouTube is Kent Hovind Official. There's an email on there. They can send in questions. It is thedrdino@gmail.com. They can write to me, 29 Cummings Road, Cummings, in Pensacola, Florida, 32503. The website, 2peter3.com, is going up any day, or maybe even now. The number 2, the word Peter, and the number 3. If they type it in and it's not ready yet, it'll go to freekenthovind.com. It's the same guy doing the other website, so the message will get to me that way. Okay?
Okay, and real quick, I have all these shirts, and I wanted to send them to you, but I didn't know what sizes I should send for the family and stuff, for the Hovindication shirts. Can you give me some sizes and how many that I can send you?
Well, let's see. There are 13 of us, my wife and I, 3 kids, each married, and 5 grandkids, ranging from 8 to 13. So, no, I could not give the size. I don't know the sizes.
Okay. You want me to just throw a box together and just give you some assorted sizes?
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay, Kent. Well, thanks for your time, and I don't think there was anything else. Could you just close us in a word of prayer?
Sure, be glad to. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for these people and their desire to reach the world with the gospel, Lord, and their effort to spread the truth around. Please bless them. Please guide them, Lord. Help this podcast to go out and reach many tens of thousands for your kingdom. Lord, help each person who's listening to get motivated to do something for your kingdom, to stay pure themselves, but also to go reach others that are lost and headed for hell. Lord, help us to be soul winners and evangelistic and soul conscious. And Lord, we've got a wicked world we live in with a bunch of people teaching some really dumb stuff. And help us not to hate them, but to hate the sin and to hate the lie, but to love the sinner. Lord, please give us wisdom how we can please you in everything now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Kent.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right, welcome back, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to an hour and a half with one of my favorite speakers and just all around, men of God that just represent the kingdom. There's so much that could be said about this, and Dan's not here right now to say it. I will say this: Dan and I spoke yesterday, and he's planning on tuning in with me with a special guest for our final episode, number 26, where we just do 2 years in review. So we'll talk even more about like Hovind and kind of what led us down this path, and maybe our thoughts now on things, retrospectively. So I'm going to try to leave some of that for episode 26, and I'm not going to say who our special guest is, but anyone who's followed us since the beginning maybe has an idea if they think hard enough about it. But I am joined, however, since Dan is not here, once again with my sister Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Sam.
welcome here to GPR headquarters in the bedroom here. It's fancy studio we got going on here.
Oh, it doesn't get any higher technology over here.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of cool that you got to do the last episode on eugenics on the outro, and then kind of follow that up with an evolutionary, you know, where does all that come from? And it worked out perfect, I think. I thought, you know, one of the things that we said in the interview towards the end, I think it was that, you know, what's the point if our government believes in evolution and pushes it in the public school systems, and survival of the fittest is the Darwinian outlook, then what's the point of any sort of compassion? What's the point of hospitals? I mean, if it's survival of the fittest, then who cares what happens to people?
Right, exactly. There is no point except maybe to make other people look like they care.
Right.
You know?
No, yeah. And then it begs to question, you know, in regard to what we talked about with Andrew Hoffman, if that is what they believe in survival of the fittest, and they're doing hospitals that are now with the Affordable Health Care Act, you know, and the government's so closely tied and knit into that healthcare system, it makes you beg to wonder, you know, so it's not about healthcare. If you're about survival of the fittest, then this is the opposite of healthcare, which would be eugenics care, which is exactly what we were talking about with Andrew. So I think, you know, not to get too conspiracy nutty here, but I definitely think that that's what's up with the New World Order and the quote-unquote healthcare system.
Right. Well, healthcare isn't really healthcare. It's just let's manage all the diseases you've gotten over your lifetime now and, you know, make you maybe feel a little more comfortable, and that's about it.
Well, it's just dull down the pain with some sort of thing that'll numb me,
exactly.
and it's not there now, or
it's
at least I can't
care.
feel it.
It's symptom care
exactly.
now.
It is symptom care. But like Leonard Ulrich said in our very first episode, you know, the symptom care, you know, it's causing the symptoms at the same time. So it's like the Hegelian dialectic.
Exactly.
Right back from the get-go. It causes the very problem. Let's see.
Right. There's this one. I just remember, sorry, I'll go on a tangent here, but I just remember reading side effects for this one drug when I was in my internship, and I was looking at the medication list for a patient, and I think they were in there for like headache and some other things. And one of the side effects of this drug was headache and dizziness and a bunch of stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, the answer to the problem that it creates. You know, it's exactly the Hegelian dialectic, like Leonard said. I thought that was genius when he said that. I couldn't believe I didn't think of that in correlation with medicine. But yeah, so Sarah, we might as well like recount a little bit, because you got to go to the prophecy forum with me and my wife last winter when we met up with Dan and Elizabeth there.
Yep.
And so you were kind of there. You got to witness everything unfold, because I guess I was saying when we went to dinner with Basil and Gons and Dan Duvall and Audrey and all those people, I was saying, you know, I think my last episode will be with Kent Hovind.
Yeah, like, you did say that. You said, if I get to talk to Kent, that would be my last episode.
Yeah, because you just can't come back from that. And so that was, I think, what was that, Friday night, I think it was? And then Saturday was the day we left, because we were only there for a day, like technically.
Yeah, because we left Thursday night and got there late Thursday night or early Friday morning, I guess.
Yeah. And so
then left Saturday
So
night,
Friday was an all-day event, and then we went out at night.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just weird, because so then on Saturday, I received a text message from Archaeologic, from Destiny Lab, and from Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo. And he and I had been in contact for maybe a month and a half before that, talking about, he was kind of trying to hook me up with Eric Hovind to interview Eric Hovind on creationism. And because he kind of had met Eric a long time ago and had contact with him. So he was helping me with that. And, you know, lo and behold, not even 24 hours, nowhere near like that much time after me saying that to you and Audrey and Dan, you know, at that table, Ark texts me and says, "Hey, you'll never guess who I just talked to, Kent Hovind." And it was like, what? And do you remember that? I mean,
I do. I remember that.
It was trippy.
It was. And you were like really excited, I remember, because he said maybe he could set it up for you to talk to him. And you were just really pumped up, I remember.
Yep. And I remember, I mean, he did hook me up, and he got in touch with Kent and did a couple interviews with Kent on his show. And then I was so excited to talk to Kent. I got the phone call from him while I was working on the apartment here on the campground.
That's right.
And as I got the call, I ran out of the apartment, and the deck was all full of ice, and I slipped and fell and lost my phone, and the battery fell out as Kent was trying to call me, and it was the worst feeling ever.
Oh, Satan loves to throw that in for you.
I was just being tested. But no, it was surreal to just be able to speak with him. And I think most of a lot of the things I wanted to ask Kent, we did in that very first coin toss with Kent, which would have been, I think, coin toss number 2, which was a 2-hour prison special with Kent, where I asked him a lot of legal questions and things that I just had questions about. And I'll probably recount that more with Dan on episode 26 here, the final episode of GPR. But yeah, it was just so cool. I remember driving home even from the conference with you and talking about, how cool would it be to start like a prison ministry? And like I had all these ideas, and lo and behold, look what ended up happening. We ended up starting like this entire We Demand Hovindication campaign with shirts and an album, and God just like moved through all of us across, the world, really. There was people from all over the place getting involved, and you had a huge hand in helping me with mailing out t-shirts.
Yeah, and I sent a lot of overseas packages, so I know a lot of people all over the world were very interested.
And I know I saw the Bandcamp receipts too from that album. I mean, we got them from all over the world. It was just amazing. And it just seemed like, I don't know, it just seemed like God wanted all of us to use our gifts together, and we did. And whether or not what we did is what helped Kent or not, I don't know. I think God in the end gets the glory for everything no matter what. But it was just like, whatever you say, Lord, we're just going to do it. And it was just funny, again, like I said, talking to you about a prison ministry on the way home, like I've been feeling that. And then to have this come up, and it was just, I don't know, it's a spiritual thing, wasn't it?
Very much so.
It's cool. One of the other things that we talked about, and I would like to point this out to people, I did bring up the DSM again. This is like the third time we've brought it up now on the show, but I really think that's important.
It really is. I mean, it's really scary to think that that's actually part of it, and it's just ready and waiting for them to use it against people.
Right.
It's just, it is scary to think.
Right.
And people do need to be aware of it.
On top of that, like, you got this whole gay marriage thing, for instance, and so you've got already Christians being labeled as crazy if you use the Bible in a concrete way to direct your daily life. But then you've got things like gay marriage, which is just going to kill the church. The church is going to have no choice in this matter of marrying at some point. Right now, they still have a choice to a degree, but that's gonna cease to exist. And when this 501c3 thing really kicks in, ramps up, and this is kind of like, again, part of the whole Kent Hovind thing was that Kent wasn't doing that. He wasn't part of a 501c3. And so when that happens, the church's back is going to be broken overnight. We've been saying this for a while on the show, and Matt and I were talking about this a year ago or a year and a half ago. We were saying, when that happens in like a few years, that's going to kill the church. I mean, it's going to be sink or swim at that point for the church.
It's already happening to like non-church organizations, businesses and places that aren't going to be, that don't want to participate, and then they're forced to, or they're fined by the courts or something. So it's just a matter of time. Yeah, no, but I just think it's crazy how fast everything's kind of escalating at this point. And it's going to be interesting to see what else happens. And on that note, the sci-fi movies that we watch, all are evolution based. I mean, what sci-fi movie or comic doesn't have an evolutionary twist to it? I mean, it's all there all the time. Man evolves into this sort of
superhero through some sort of evolutionary process or something that's backed by evolution, you know, with an explanation scientifically that way. And, you know, we talked about, you know, like the Great Deception with Kent at the end. We talked about an alien agenda, you know. And I think whether or not, you know, the Antichrist is going to be that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not married to anything like that. I don't necessarily think the Antichrist is going to be, you know, an extraterrestrial or somebody posing to be an extraterrestrial, but I definitely think that the alien agenda is going to be a deception, and it's going to be huge. And when it happens, you're going to see people fall away from the faith. I think Gans is right in his first film, An Age of Deceit, where he talks a lot about that. But then I want to even talk more. I didn't get to bring this up with Kent, but how about transhumanism? Like, we didn't really cover that.
We didn't really.
And I should have asked him a little bit about that, but I know that Gans asked him in the Canary Cry interview that they did on episode 96, I think it was. So I know there are, if anybody's listening and they want to hear Kent's view maybe more on that.
I think he talks about it in some of his videos on his YouTube channel. So you can check that out always. And you can email him questions and he'll answer them on his YouTube.
Right.
So,
but, you know, we're messing with God's image, you know, and at some point, can we become irredeemable through, I mean, it does say Mark of the Beast, like, what is that, you know? And I think for those of you who, I mean, I know we share a lot of listeners with Canary Cry Radio, but Gans, once again, you know, Age of Deceit 2. Go check out Age of Deceit 2.
That was a really great film.
Amazing. To me, it's the best film I saw all of 2014, and I'll stick by that. I mean, I haven't seen a movie better than that in 2014. So Age of Deceit, Part 2, what is it, Rise of the Beast Image or something like that?
I think so.
It's awesome. And I really think at this point, when Dan and I jump off here, we haven't covered transhumanism a ton in this show. I mean, we just a little bit here and there.
Well, I think Canary Cry has that pretty well covered.
They've got it. They've got it. And you know what, though? I'm really glad that they do.
Yeah.
They've had their finger on that pulse since they started, and that's
it's
been
an
their
important
calling.
part. It's an important part to think about.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that there are people out there talking about it because it's becoming more and more normal. I mean, more and more people are hearing about it, and more people need to hear about it and hear a biblical explanation for what could happen with it. So that's one thing I want to say with evolution. I mean, if you believe in evolution, then yeah, I mean, there's no ethical problems with manipulating DNA and any of that kind of stuff.
That's right. You're just making yourself stronger and fitter and better.
Right.
So
you're
helping. You're helping humanity.
What did Andrew say? Giving evolution a helping hand. You know, like, so I mean that's. You know, I mean, because, you know, evolution needs a helping hand because evolution is so solid. Okay, what else?
Well, I just want to say, like, I think you talked about this in the intro a little about your friend that you had a conversation with.
Yeah.
And how he said he wished that people maybe talked more about the fact that there's no actual proof for the evolution. And it just strikes me because I remember taking biology as a freshman in high school. And my science teacher, you know, when we started the evolution topic as a part of the course, she introduced it by saying, we're going to learn about the theory of evolution. And it was theory still back then.
Yeah.
Theory. But now it seems like it's just taught in schools as fact. I mean, I haven't had the misfortune of having a teacher that's been that forceful and saying that it's 100% fact, but I know people who've taken science courses. I know this guy from my church in Illinois that I went to when I was going to school down there. He was a pre-med student, and one of his science teachers there was very adamant that evolution was 100% true, and she would argue with him in class, and it gave him a really hard time in class, actually. So,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's changed so much.
It has.
And yet there's no conclusive proof, because how can you prove it?
Sure.
I mean, because you're just guessing on what happened. You only have the evidence in front of you, and you have to go back and create some kind of theory of how it could have led to what is in front of you.
Well, and again, same with me. My experience was in junior high, them presenting it as, a theory. And by high school, I mean, it seemed like it was almost assumed that it was fact, or that it was at least taught as a strong possibility. You know what I mean? And that's I guess that's fine, whatever. But when I exited high school, I didn't buy it. Like, I was like, no, God.
Right.
God created the universe.
Right.
God created everything. I don't think it just kind of happened on its own.
Right.
But I think, like I said, I'll just say it again. I think through the guise of comedy, through the guise of entertainment, it's shoved down our throats. You have shows like nowadays, it's even worse. Like, you have shows like The Big Bang Theory.
What are they doing here?
Well, we came to apologize.
Again.
And bring you home. So why don't you pack up your stuff and we'll head back?
No, this is my home now. Thanks to you, my career is over. And I will spend the rest of my life here in Texas, trying to teach evolution to creationists.
You watch your mouth, Shelley. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Evolution isn't an opinion, it's fact.
And that is your opinion.
I forgive you. Let's go home.
Don't tell me prayer doesn't work.
I mean, you have these so pro-evolutionary shows. I mean, I said it before in the last, outro on Andrew Hoffman, but, David Cross, it was like assumed that, George Bush is said that he's rethinking evolution, like that it might be true. Yeah, with its facts and, it was.
But what facts? I mean.
Yeah, but that's just the way they present it. And I know I've talked about this a lot the last few episodes. Since Dan hasn't been here, it seems like the evolutionary topics come up a lot. I think that if you really get into it, I mean, even on the musical tip, like, what band doesn't support evolution? I mean, what show doesn't support evolution? What news station doesn't support evolution? What magazine doesn't support evolution? I mean, it's really hard to find anything that doesn't support evolution.
Even the Pope supports evolution.
Right.
He thinks that God is an evolving God.
Well, he's infallible, so I mean, he evolved to get to the point of infallibility, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, no, but yeah, it's shoved in our faces, and I think, Sarah, I don't know about you, but I feel like this was what we had to cap off GPR with, as far as official episodes go, because this is the religion of society, of the world, of secularism, and it doesn't jive with the Bible.
That's right.
It absolutely does not jive with the Bible.
Right. Absolutely. It's it's Satan's. It's his little baby. It's his little genius, idea. It's been his idea since the Garden of Eden. So,
well, and just like the common saying goes, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince the world that he didn't exist. But it seems more like lately to me, it's more like what the devil has done is convinced the world to believe that God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Again, the whole premise of evolution really just plays on human pride. In the end, we can get there on our own. There is nothing above us. And I just think that's a really sad outlook.
I do too. And I was just talking to Dad about this today, about how sad it is for those people, because they don't have that to look forward to having like a relationship with a creator. It's just all cold, scientific. Well, it just happened.
Right. And can you imagine? I'm just thinking of like some examples, like on the campground here, of people. Like, I mean, the situations where you go, wait, you believe that this is as good as it gets? Like,
right?
Man is as high and supreme as possible. Like, we are the greatest thing ever. Are you kidding? Whoa. Back up, because if this is it, then what's the point?
Well, then I just want out.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, and I think all of us, we're sinners, and we're in a world that doesn't recognize the word sin. They don't even, there is no such thing as sin.
Oh no,
sin's a 4-letter word at this point. You can't say you're sinning.
Well, then you're judging me.
Right. There is no black and white. I mean, there's no right and wrong. It's all relative.
There are no absolutes.
Oh, yes. And it's not like he answered that one at all for us. Anyway, is there anything else we could say about evolution?
No, I don't believe in it. That's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, I don't believe in it. I don't buy it. Not buying into what the world is selling over here. Okay, the only one thing I want to say before we do hang up here, because Dan and I and quote-unquote special guest will have an episode where we just recount some memories of episodes and kind of end it the way it started, if you know what I mean. So I don't want to say really...
Put on your thinking caps, people.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard now to figure out who our special guest is. So, but one thing I did want to say is that I wanted to ask Kent, I've just been feeling, led to do more artistically charged things lately for the Lord, just because I feel like that's where I'm at. Like, that's what God made me more inclined to do. Mm-hmm. And when I asked him that question about apologetics at the end,
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any sources or resources, anything you'd recommend? His response really answered a deeper question for me that I didn't ask him. And he said, if you recount, his response was something to the effect of, I hate the word apologetics. It insinuates that you have to apologize, and I apologize not at all for the Bible. And then he went into, there's a bunch of people out there that feel the need to reach the top tier of intellectuals on the earth, and while that can be a calling, I would hate to think that if you have a gift that God gave you that, that you could be using, then not to use it and take on something like that might be a waste. And what he did there, like without knowing it, was, I basically wanted to just ask him that exact thing, was like, Kent, is it just okay if like simple-minded, artistic weirdo people like me, is it okay if we just kind of make some music for the Lord, or make a video for the Lord, or don't get on in front of a pulpit, or don't even necessarily even have a podcast, about this kind of stuff. Just kind of figure it out how to win souls in our own way, or at least contribute to the kingdom in a small way, in our small sphere of influence, And he basically answered it right there for me. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask. And it was very... I definitely took that as a sign for whatever's next with Hallelujah and the music and God's Property Media. And I just feel like God just, like, this was a supernatural path, like that we were on here. I mean, this was since the beginning of this show, and to end this way. And
yeah, well, I think definitely, you can reach people in a myriad of ways,
Mm-hmm.
Some people respond more to like just a podcast. Some people respond more to someone just talking to them. Some people respond to music. God created us all very differently, gave us all different capacities and capabilities. So if you feel called to minister in a certain way, then you should probably do that.
Right. And I think we have, what I've kind of realized is that we have so many people podcasting in this network. Not compared to other, niches out there. There's, probably more Joel Osteen types out there than there are in what we're doing. But the people that are doing it are so good, and I feel like I'm pretty much bottom level, entry level, just God allowed for this to happen. And the people that listen to this show, if nothing else, if they are just finding out about Building 7, if they're just finding out about the Federal Reserve, whatever have you, the Nephilim, whatever it is that drives you to realize the prophetic, truth of the Bible and where we're at today, and make that correlation of the New World Order, well, I feel like this show is an honest representation of two fellow believers who just felt led to learn more. And so,
right, and that's what you said from the beginning.
And so as you go through this podcast, if anybody feels that there's value to it, like at least you're just getting something like that's bare bones honesty. We're asking the questions that anyone can ask. It's very, very simplistic, but the people that we have on here know what they're talking about. And do we agree with them all? No. But, there's a lot of truth, I think, to be, gleaned from this show. And I feel better prepared in my walk and much more amped up to share the gospel after everything that's happened over the last 2 years. I mean, 2+ years, it's been phenomenal. So anything you want to say?
I've enjoyed your podcast. I like listening to a lot of podcasts, but yours is good. I definitely think that you've done a good job here. I appreciate definitely Kent coming on and talking with us. That was really a great experience.
He was pretty big in your life too, I would say. Like a lot of the things that he presented.
Yeah, definitely. As somebody who studied a lot of science for, like my degree, I could never understand evolution, how it really could ever, reconcile with the Bible. And just finding Ken Hovind's stuff really helped me understand, how these things could be explained from a biblical perspective. And it just really opened my eyes to see how much more there is to the Bible than really what we tend to give it credit for and delve into. We don't really dig deep nowadays, and it just really helped me in that aspect. So
yeah, no, same with me. He was huge in my faith. So it's people like Kent. I think that's just a God-given gift that it should not be wasted.
Oh, absolutely.
And the fact that he led 700 men plus to Christ, while he was in prison for 9 years, it's like, who does that? It's amazing.
I can't imagine. I'd probably just be so scared being in there that I wouldn't want to talk to anybody.
Right. What's our excuse? Well, I guess I'd like to just say a quick prayer, I think that I just want to close this out. And, when we get around to, hopefully there will be one more coin toss episode with Dr. Greg Dixon of the Indianapolis Baptist Temple.
Right.
I can't say when or if that'll even happen. It's on God's time when it does. It could happen months from now. It could happen a year from now. I don't know if it will, but I'd really like to do that one if God wills it. As far as episode 26, that should be coming sooner than later. I think relatively soon we'll have something together there, and it'll just be a really fun episode. It will be just a totally chill, sit back, and you'll get some updates from one of our favorite guests. And I'm just going to say a quick word if y'all will join me here. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for what you've done through this podcast, what you've done through the other podcasts like Canary Cry Radio and Nowhere to Run and PID Radio and just all of them, Lord. They're just doing things that a lot of people aren't, and I think they're reaching people in a way that the church just isn't these days, Lord. And I just thank you for safety nets like Kent Hovind and people like that. And Lord, I just want to thank you for sending Rudy Davis and Aaron Davis and Ernie Land and Paul Hansen and all these people that have been a tremendous help for Dr. Kent Hovind. And we lift Paul Hansen up to you, Lord. We just pray that you be with him on, as he serves out this minimal sentence for mailing a letter, Lord. And we just pray that you would use him for your glory. Help exonerate these two men from whatever the world thinks that they did. Because, Lord, I'm still not convinced that they did anything wrong. And I believe that they are living for you, Lord. Thank you for letting us speak with them and be a part of this movement. And thank you to people around the world that have listened to this show and supported Kent. Lord, I thank you for the ability that you've given Kent Hovind to penetrate the minds of people and get them to soften their hearts and rethink the Bible and rethink what they know about the world as we know it. Lord, I just thank you, because without him, I mean, I know my faith certainly wouldn't be as strong as it is today. And thank you for letting us speak with him, Lord. I just pray that you could continue to bless him as he goes to do conferences and he gets more done for your kingdom again. And Father, we just pray for even, all of Kent's family that have had to endure this 9-year sentence. We lift up Eric Hovind to you, Lord, and lift up the other siblings and the grandkids, and Lord, just help heal the loss of time from a worldly system, Lord. I just pray for all the people right now, Lord, that are out there to just discredit Kent and anything to do with Kent. Lord, thank you for Ark from Ark and Neo and Destiny Lab, Lord, that you made this happen, Lord. And I just pray that you would bless him in whatever he's doing right now, Lord. I would pray for all the Revelations Radio Network as they do your will, that you would just have your hands upon their ministries, Lord. And anybody who's listening to this show that goes on to do ministry in any sort of capacity, Lord, that you would keep your hands on them and guide them and make the decisions for them, Lord, and help discern. Lord, you are an amazing God. You are one that foresees things that none of us have a clue about. And we think we know, we think we have control, Lord, and you constantly remind us that it's on your watch, Lord. And thank you for that. Thank you for humbling us. And thank you for sending your Son to die for us and put all of our debt on his tab, Lord. And thank you for your simple truth of the gospel, Lord, that is available to anyone who accepts and repents, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us on this final episode of GPR. And for those of you who didn't catch it, go check out Kent Hovind's YouTube channel. You can still go to freekent.com and listen to all kinds of Kent support. You can get yourself a digital We Demand Hovindication album, and you can still get t-shirts. They're available. 2peter3.com. Check it out. freekenthovind.com. That's available. For those of you in Texas, I believe Kent is doing a conference, I think in October, in Dallas. So God's moving, man. So if you know anybody that's out there, try to figure out when he's doing it. You want to go, check that out. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. He will not disappoint, I'm sure.
We're in Texas,
Dallas, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly, but I have a feeling Rudy and Aaron Davis will be there. Well, I just want to again thank everybody, and I really wanted to send a special thank you out to Hannah for setting this interview up with Kent and for kind of working behind the scenes and helping Kent get on shows. And if there are any shows out there that want to have Kent Hovind on, hit us up, hit somebody up, get him on there. I mean, he'll talk to anybody, he'll debate anybody, whatever you want. Do it now. Get on it.
Right now.
Right now. Okay, well, until next time, guys.
Don't buy into what the world is selling.
Thank you for listening to God's Property Radio. We thank you for your prayers and support. Until next time, don't buy into what the world's selling.
Hey guys.
I think he's gone.
Is he gone?
He's gone.
There it is.
Is he gone? Cool. Awesome. Well, I want to do a little intro with you guys. I think just to give a little bit more of a background about this situation. Just a short thing, not necessarily going into the history of everything, but just in case there's somebody out there who doesn't know who this guy is or why they should care. So we'll just do a little hello. Sam and Dan are here, following for a while. Yes, we have been following him for a while. How did you get started following him for a while? Well, because we saw him and then we followed him for a while.
And I think, Basil, you've got it all taken down there. So, if you could work in your voice impersonations a little better, I think you're good.
I'm the worst impersonator.
It's true. The only reason we've got like a bunch of downloads now is because you guys came on our show. So, it's all about Canary.
And it's all us. I have a dedicated computer that constantly downloads.
That's how you do it. World renowned, huh? You pinging off some international servers there, Basil?
Yeah, I'm pretty techie.
Oh, man.
Okay, let's do it.
Basil, where are you right now? Like, geographically, latitude, longitude?
I'm inside one of the newly discovered Mexican pyramids.
With air conditioning.
My co-host Juan is a mummy.
Oh, my word.
Alright, here we go. Alright, well, there you have it, folks. Thanks for listening to this episode of Canary Cry Radio. Make sure to tune in next time. Until you do, think outside the cage.
The coin, man. The coin. Think outside the coin. I'm just kidding.
So much sense.
I'm just kidding.
We kind of jumped all over the place there, but, that's just sort of how we roll, I guess.
It's good.
That's cool. We're really disorganized here, so.
A little bit of editing for you, Gons. What I do.
I love Basil. I love
what?
Sorry. Okay, I love, what was it? I'm trying to remember the guy that you had on. Was it Michael Lake? I think it was on that episode. And you made a comment like, oh, it's okay. We edit it. We'll get all the edit. And I was thinking, Gons edits?
I type a lot in the we. Like, even when
the royal we. It's the royal we.
Gons to do something, I just say we. Like, oh, we should schedule somebody. When really it just means, like, hey, Gons, email this guy.
And you see, Sam takes that so personally because he does practically all the editing. I think I've done 2, maybe 3 of them.
It's 2.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's. All those editors. That's what they're like, right, Gons?
Yeah, they're just self-absorbed.
There are times. There's certain episodes. Certain times when Gons make sure to be very clear how little I do.
Hey Basil, would you be down to design a logo for me?
Probably.
So
I charge $1,500 an hour.
Would you be down to do one for free $99?
Yeah, what for?
Well, it actually is a logo for a podcast that I want to start. It's a new podcast I want to start.
He's leaving me. We're getting a divorce.
Yeah, if you guys know anybody that is out there that maybe wants to take over for my position as a co-host / doing everything. No, I'm just kidding. Dan, I'm sure Dan doesn't want to really stop, but we've also talked to some people about taking over. But I'm starting just this thing where I don't have to commit to any time, like once a month or whatever. It's just whenever God kind of allows it to happen, and it's going to be more artsy focused with a biblical message. But it's called Hallelujah Praisecast. And so I have just this idea for the Hallelujah logo, like with like trumpets and drums and stuff. I don't know. It's just an idea. So I don't know if I can send you some more ideas for it, but just wondering if you might want to help me with that.
You'll spend like 3 hours doing it, and then he'll be like, "It's wrong," and like tear it apart. What's the field?
Gons, I feel like that was a little bitterness coming through from working with Sam.
No, it's not hip hop. It's everything. I mean, you know. What?
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't do any East Coast stuff. All right, yeah, sounds good. I'll play around with something. Get some time here. When are you trying to get started?
In the next like couple months or something. You know, whatever. So.
I could do that.
Hey Basil, so
Get on the list. Yo.
I've got a question now. Do you guys got a contact for Standeo that I can reach out to? Because I'm guessing that's going to be like a really long story with him, probably a couple different sessions because there's a lot to him.
Sure, we got an email.
Okay. If I could get you that from you guys, that'd be cool because I'd love to set you up or set that up. And now I've.
Do we have an email for that? For what? For Standeo. I think we do, right? Contact him? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, for sure. We'll send that over.
Sorry, Basil, you've reached the ears of Scott Schumann.
Yay!
Okay, so
I have a hater.
He just made a video called Gonzo Shimura is a Gonzo journalist deceiver, and he posted it a couple days ago. It's got 8 views.
Yeah.
And the description is, this guy is a charlatan in the church. He and his buddy on Canary Cry Radio don't even use their real names. Dun, dun.
Oh my goodness.
Dun, dun,
His
dun.
partner's name is Basil Rosewater, and there's no mention of who he is and where he is from.
Oh no!
It's like me starting a ministry and calling myself Ice Cream Pickle.
What?
True. It is very
Just like it.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Dude, more than anything, that bothers people so
The fact
much.
that they're so successful proves we are in the end times and the bride is asleep.
It's true. Everybody's asleep.
Go to my book. Buy my book.
Buy my book. Buy my book. Buy my book.
Yeah, I think Leonard.
This one made me cringe today. It says your names are not really Gons and Basil. Sad face. Why are you not using your real names? Yeah, I know about the security type things you get through anonymity, but it's not like Satan and all the demons don't know your name anyway.
What?
I'm a little surprised at this, I guess, because I've seen preachers and prophets have their names changed by God, but I don't remember any of them who went by another name for any other reason. Esther, I guess, is one, but I don't know. Brandy.
YouTube is like infested with.
Oh, it infuriates me. I can't. We started this YouTube channel. I cannot read the comments. It's just horrible.
Don't read them.
It just makes me lose faith in everyone.
Oh, dude, trust me. I've been getting like. There was another guy that just came after me with, like, very Schumann-esque thing, saying that I'm teaching Gnosticism.
Yeah.
And like,
show
yourself approved.
I would rather that there's a whole campaign, and this isn't just, Lord, please don't test me with this, but I would rather a whole campaign of people saying that, like, I'm a CIA shill or something, than just a constant stream of people upset that I don't use my real name. Like, that is the most offensive thing to people for some reason.
It's because they feel like they can't connect with you. Although your license was very revealing.
Good. I don't want those people to connect with me. Well, it was like, who was it? Doug Hamp's. I think it was Doug Hamp's wife, who at the first conference we did, I wore sunglasses the whole time, much like I did the second one, and she came up to me very, very seriously, and she said, I just can't trust anyone who I don't see their eyes. Will you show me your eyeball? I was like, sorry, nope, not today. This is my thing. She's like, no, really, I need to see them. And she asked me like 2 or 3 times during the conference. And finally I did a very, very sly peek over the top of my sunglasses. And I wanted it to be like a big like moment where she's like, oh, I can trust you. She's just like, oh, they're blue. Thank you. Like, okay. Gosh.
Well, I have a staffer here this summer who would say that blue eyes are untrustworthy.
Oh, totally. I agree with that. They're blue, like the sky. and the sky's mysterious. Why is it blue? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going on behind these soul gates.
Oh. Did you install a soul catcher yet or no?
I don't have a soul, actually, if you believe some of the comments on YouTube.
Whatever.
All right. Well, I'm good, everybody. Everybody else good?
Hey, Basil. Basil, can you add us on Skype so we can reach you, other than through email?
Oh, yeah. I don't really know. I have all these, pending invites from, I'm pretty sure, are hookers.
You get those? We get them in this thing all the time, delete, go away.
There's an invite from Total Bubbles, too. Nope, I don't want to contact you. And this Adriana McConkey person.
McConkey-bine?
Yeah, McConkey-bine. Sent me 30 invites. Yeah, it's just basil.rosewater. You can send an invitation.
I actually just did. Your picture's the canary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, you're the canary.
Oh, here we go. Accept.
Oh, look at that. We're real friends now.
Friends. All right. Now we're connected over the internet.
Oh boy.
Okay.
You go back to sleep now, Basil. It'll make you feel better.
I've got important dreams to have right now, so I think I'm gonna take off. You good, Gons?
Yeah, I'm gonna work on this tonight so we can post it tomorrow. We have people freaking out that we haven't posted an episode in 3 weeks almost.
This one guy was calling our voice message every day for a while, saying, "Hey guys, still no episode. Really bumming me out over here."
Cable guy.
Yeah, day after day.
So
okay.
just do the art tonight so that we can post it tomorrow.
I'll do it today. I'm gonna go into the office.
Oh, I'm not gonna sleep again tonight.
Sleep is for the weak, says the guy who just slept 16 hours.
I hate you. I hate you.
Guys, all you gotta do is just not have a job.
Or
then you can sleep
or
all
kids.
Or a wife.
Or a family, yeah. Yeah, single dude over there.
I don't know what any of you fools are doing with wives and families and stuff. I have a cat, alright?
We're following God's first commandment.
My life is great. I didn't say I'm not multiplying and being fruitful. Come on.
You're doing it in the feline.
In the feline.
What's happening over there?
Do you think making
it's in God's will, yes.
Donations to the sperm bank and then having that used to make babies, do you think that counts?
You're burning in hell for this. No, I'm just kidding.
Do you think that counts as being fruitful?
Fruitful, yeah.
It really takes out a lot of the really more inconvenient steps to the commandment. All right.
Hey, Sam, Dan, thank you guys for connecting us with Kent and having us do this. I appreciate you.
Yeah, that was great.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for having us come over.
Thanks for finally letting us in on your contact a year later.
I figured we'd play on your guilty conscience of keeping it from us.
I could have put you in contact with him long ago if you wanted to do prison phone calls. It just would have been poor quality. So.
Yeah. You can say that now.
No, you.
Actually, yeah, there's probably a note somewhere where you have told me, hey, if you want to, I could.
I have.
Yeah, totally, man.
I definitely.
Look, Gons, it's nice to you, but we know Basil's just I don't want to talk to the guy who was incarcerated.
Well, you have his cell phone now, so you can be like, hey, no book. Hey, what's the deal?
I haven't had a book in 3 days. No new book. What are you doing with your time, man? You should connect him with Scott Schumann.
Why did you write that book under a different name? The devil knows your name, bro.
Oh, by the way, Dan, do you still have some of those prophecy forum things out there?
Yeah. I do. Do you want them?
I got.
Before the end of the summer, I might ask you to burn them. So we'll see.
Would you like us to record it and stamp on them and send it to you?
Would you like us to record it for the Magistrates remix video that we're doing with a bunch of shenanigans?
I'll give you the green light maybe later on that. But that would be good, and send it to the guys,
Wow, Gons, I really feel like some bitterness is set in here with you. What's going on?
You're opening some spiritual doors, bro.
You don't even know.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, me too.
Take it easy,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Yep.
See you guys.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.